Good morning, everyone. Lukey, could you just let me know if I was just been struggling to get, I had to reboot, and for some reason, my devices wouldn't be picked up by StreamYard for whatever reason. Is the audio coming through fine? Is everything sort of sounding normal in that regard? What happened? Okay, thanks. Appreciate it. Okay, so all is fine. G'day, Richard. Ahoy, mateys. Yes, he approaches things on the nautical approach. Hello from Vernon, Utah, USA. G'day, John. Good to have you here. So where's Vernal? Yes, I'll have to look it up. Where is Vernal? Oops. In which part of Utah? Okay, Vernal, the county seat of the largest city in Utah County in northeast Utah. Okay. 175 miles east of Salt Lake City. Okay. And 20 miles west of Colorado border. Yeah. Well, there you go. And it's about a 10,449 people, well, according to the census in 2020. So it's a small rural town. Ah, nice. Yeah, good to have you here, John. I have to say, well, Hobart is it is the capital of Tassie, and I was born here, but it is very close to rural and many other things around it. It is considered a regional capital because it doesn't have a big population. I mean, the Hobart area itself has about 20 odd thousand, and the greater Hobart area is about 200 odd thousand. But it's still, in comparison to big cities, it's, and I did live on the west coast of Greece years ago, which was that was definitely a rural city. It was only about 70,000, about 100,000 now. But yeah, I looked at my backyard and there was just farming land. So I have lived in those sort of environments, and I do have to say I do enjoy that environment. Yes, less complicated, less hustle and bustle, so to speak. Yeah, good to have you here, mate. Daniel, good to see you, mate. Thank you, Richard. You too. It's been the weather a bit, thickly in Tasmania. But yesterday it was, early in the morning, it just was bucketing. So I had to delay my walk, but I still walked, delayed it. But it was when it eased off, and then it was just drizzly. So it wasn't too bad. I only had to use the umbrella for part of the way. So after that, it was, and today's been sort of mixed bag. Is that how it goes? Racial profiling now, are we? I identify as someone from Antarctica, as a penguin. Apparently you can do that nowadays. You can identify as anything. XY chromosomes don't count. According to Google and every other lunatic out there. Not like us. Yeah, do hit the like button, Paul. Far from the trees. Yes, you get a good eye view of all the forest. Very well. From Bart to Harry. Pretty good Saturday night, if you ask me. Oh, thanks for being here, mate. It's going to be a good marathon this time around. NTL, good to have you here, mate. Shelley, always a pleasure, my dear. Oh, good, but full of pork. I actually bought some really nice pork sausages today. I went down to the farmer's market, so actually sent me all these bloody photos. He's out of judo at the moment, my brother. So there's that bottom stuff. I just sent him he goes, oh, great. So they're off to judo competition. He used to be a judo champion of Northern Territory, so he likes that sort of stuff. So anyway, let's move on. Sammy, good to have you here, mate. Fair enough. Somebody called. Yes. God. I'm just trying to help you guys with reminding you that the importance of a regulatory nutrient in animal foods and popularizing it. Yes. I know it's going to stick. I'm the taurine man now. Deborah, g'day. Good evening, Harry from Colorado. Good to have you here. Strict Tom. Hello, yeah. Hello, yeah, as well. I was just going to say, very laconic of you. Fair enough. So you're listening to me in the background. I was having rebooting issues and trying to get the devices to be picked up by StreamYard, which when I was going in, was just saying no device. I'm going, whatever. Things don't always work when you do live streams. You guys need to understand, like Bart as well, he gets audio problems and all sorts of things. Live streams are not planned, like precision. If you're doing a premiere video or whatever, you can actually set up everything, make sure that everything's fine, that nothing's going to go astray or nothing's going to go whoops or whatever, but you got to be very careful in that way. Yes. Anyway, can excessive fat be dangerous for the mitochondria? Not really. I mean, if you were to guzzle down like heaps and heaps and heaps and heaps and heaps of, in a very short amount of time, like liquid fats, like cream, just cream bottles, one after the other, yes. But is it going to kill you for one day if you're blockading, excess energy? Not really, It's really if you're doing it on a day-to-day basis continuously and you're engaging the Randall cycle. Usually when you mix the macros, you blockade both pathways and you basically end up causing the Randall cycle to be engaged for longer. That's why we say that it's contraindicated to basically that. But in order to basically get the Randall cycle to engage in basically, if you're just having fat or just having sugar, is very hard. you have to really go hard. I mean, even Walter Kempner that did the studies back in the 1930s, I did a video on the guidelines. If you go to my playlist that I did with Pim Johnson, Bart's partner. So I actually do that. He had to whip people to get them to eat enough to basically get into that excess stuff. Usually it's not the case. There can be issues with the ApoE, and I have done one on the ApoE. That means chylomicron remnants, how long they circulate in the bloodstream. If they're taken up, like a person that's got a ApoE of 4,4, they'll take up much quicker, and they can induce random cycle activation much earlier because of those genetics. So there are a whole lot of variations. Mitochondrial density, so how much deuterium rich foods you've been consuming for a very long time and how much damage you've done to the electron chains. I did recent videos covering some of that information. So that is an issue in itself. That will basically mean that the gradient Randall cycle activation will be much lower for somebody with severe mitochondrial damage. So there's a lot of, it's not this sort of reductionist approach saying, well, this will happen if you do this or whatever. Yeah. But at the end of the day, most people don't eat like this. They eat normally at a normal pace, and basically the influx of chylomicrons and all that is usually at a much steadier pace. There's also it's really hard to push the envelope too much because you can only actually produce so many chylomicrons. You can only transcript, at the gut wall. So it's really hard. You really have to push things so deliberately. So it's not as easy as one would think in that regard. But there can be underlying conditions that can make it more plausible to happen even in lower gradients of intake. Yep. But that's when we do deuterium water to flush out excess deuterium and a number of other strategies that I talked about in those videos that I'm not going to cover now to deal with those things. We shouldn't get too wound up about these. A lot of people talk about these pathways in a very reductionist way, if that's it. The body's a much more complex system, and it's got a whole lot of buffering systems, a whole lot of systems that are holding on to things, and things that there's a rate limiting enzymes that actually have to do certain things. There's all these sort of things. So, and if you eat excess, you know what will happen? You'll push it into fat storage, that excess. And, our ancestors did that. They had excess. It's not a pathological thing to worry about. They had excess and they put on body fat. So in the lean months, in the lean periods, they had excess. Or when you're not eating, you re-access that. When you eat excess energy in a meal, as an example, that excess will be stored. The question is, what type are you using? So if you're using fat, which is going to be low in deuterium, it's going to be much healthier for you. Even if you store some of that through excess energy, fine. If you're only having one meal a day, the rest of the day, then, you're going to have hormone sensitive lipase activated, and you're going to be basically using that through the whole day. So where's the issue? Stop thinking in reductionist terms. Think in more, if you were to basically be eating every 2 hours, massive amounts continuously and doing that for days and days and days, obviously you're going to be storing excess energy. But, most people don't do that, and you get the satiety signaling when you eat the species appropriate food. So it's a non-issue. Let's get away from this. People like to use a bit of reductionism or use these sort of things. It's like Robbie, on that video that Bart did. He was talking about basically, NAD and all that, and FAD, and that was also part of the redox. So these basically that move electrons in the electron chain. What does that have to do? That happens in normal physiology. Has nothing to do with the Randall cycle activation. People like throwing terms that seems intelligent or to use terms, but in reality, I just try to remove the biochemistry and just talk about exactly the interplay of these things. That makes more sense for people, because nobody's going to go out there and do a degree in physiology or biochemistry. They just want to know how the body works in plain English. These people, they'll use these sort of terminologies, and yes, you can basically, cause a blockade by excess energy. but it's not a pathological thing unless you're doing it every couple of hours, like most people do nowadays. Every 2 hours, they're stuffing there because they're not getting satiety signaling properly because they're eating inappropriately. These mixed sort of highly palatable foods or processed foods that have got a lot of seed oils, and they're doing damage to the mitochondria, so they're exacerbating Randall cycle activation over the long haul as well. Anyway, morning all from Canberra. How are things in the capital, Robbie? Thanks, mate, for thinking about Dad as well. Yeah, he's doing better. He was out and about yesterday. On Friday. I don't know what he was doing yesterday. I was in the daytime anyway. I did drop in. He was fine. I've got him on the actual enzymes to clear out his clots. But he's getting around now. He's much better, and pretty much we've come to an agreement with him and his doctor, because I did visit his doctor. No more jabs, basically. So that's not going to happen again. Yes, he doesn't listen sometimes. Yeah. Anyway, listens to these commercials and he thinks, oh, everybody else is doing, the government's saying this. They grew up in that generation. They went through the 50s and 60s. They saw stable governments and all that, and they go, well, the world transformed from something very basic to a very modern world. So they think, well, these experts must know their stuff to make this modern world. So we live in the modern world, and so we just don't see that world. They've seen a transformation of their world, so they don't realise that it can be corrupted by vested interests, which is unfortunate, but that's what happens. Must be the ice cream delay syndrome. Actually, I did start my coffee early. I'm at 10:30 as well, because I was, I don't know, instinctively I just grabbed it and drank it, and then I realised after, oh shit, because I usually wait until about 11 o'clock. But anyway, I started a half an hour early in terms of my time restricted feeding. Yes. But ice cream, no. I'll actually show you guys. I've got my birthday this week on Wednesday. So Wednesday, I think it's Wednesday. And that's a Japanese cheesecake. It's really creamy. Hello Kitty actually did that for me. So she made one. She was going to give me more of it. She was just going to keep a small slice, and they said, no, I'm going to take more. So then she called me selfish. Anyway, beggars can't be choosers, as they say. So, yeah, so that's for my birthday. I'll be 56. So, yes. Moving on, age-wise. So, she did make me ice cream as well, but I've run out. I was actually really good. So for every single day, I was just having a bit of a mouth, spoon or 2 spoonfuls or whatever. And then I was down to half. And then there was one night there that basically I just went through the whole lot, the rest of it. So, yes. And now I'm basically cold turkey, Sammy. Yes, ice cream turkey. No, we erythritol and sometimes stevia. Leaf is low deuterium, so it's fine. The leaf, you don't want the other stuff. The leaf part is the part that's actually, So, hi Elizabeth. Yes. And erythritol, basically, the body actually produces some, so it's not something that's actually foreign to the body, and about 90% is even absorbed. It ends up in the toilet. So if you do consume too much, you can end up with loose stools. So you've got to be very careful with erythritol. Too much. I did that by drinking 2 bottles of um, of basically this kombucha that had basically in it erythritol. And basically, let's say I ended up with loose stools. I learnt my lesson. But that was quite excessive. I shouldn't have drank that anyway. I don't know. It was a hot day and I didn't want to drink alcohol. I was just drinking that, so should have probably drank some of my raw milk instead. But anyway, we learn the hard way sometimes. I'm getting sort of the urge. So, yeah. Luckily, I was at home, which was okay. Didn't have to worry. Trying to rush to a toilet in a public toilet. Oh, yes. Oh, Loki's birthday as well. Happy birthday, Loki. Oh, well, you got to come up with excuses always. Thanks. Who's this? Oh, Loki. No, G'day, Nick. He's 25. Ah, well. So you're less than half my existence. So, yeah. Actually quite warm out there today. In comparison to the last couple of days, been all over. Probably the humidity. I should run Linux. We actually run Linux on some of our work servers. So, and I usually on old PCs, I will put what is it called? Lindows. The sort of the Linux version of Windows. When I do hand me down computers and sort of give them to other people and stuff like that, because so, and I do basically use Linux as well. But this is my laptop, which I'm using currently. I need to rebuild my other machine. I haven't bloody got around doing it. So when I do that, I'll be using that from the other room anyway. So, but I need to pull my finger out and rebuild the damn thing. Yes. So, but I need to get a new graphics card. So that's going to be more money. Anyway, shit happens. Yeah, exactly. It is actually the ultimate trick, rebooting things, just, sort of the quantum sort of fluctuations in the ether, that basically mess up code in Turing machines is basically, yes. The best thing is to just go ding. Well, with an analog computer, you don't get that. I'll just do things over and over again in sequential order, the way they are set to do predetermined tasks. G'day, Sandra. And Elf, hi to you as well. I'm in the land of beer and cheese. Like I can't handle beer, honestly. Even last night I went out and I basically had cider, and so I said to my brother Sean, he was having basically a stout. His partner was having beer. Nowadays I just have cider. It's much easier to consume. I just find it too damn difficult. Beer tastes like piss. I have to agree with that, Bruce. Oops. Yeah, thanks, mate. I appreciate it. Thank you so very much, Harry, for all your hard work and dedication to the topic of human health. You are greatly appreciated and very much loved. I just completed my 6th month eating 100% carnivore. Congratulations to you, David. Yeah, good for you, mate. And thanks for the donation. Look, a lot of people, when they get on a species appropriate diet, see It's, I mean, if you've got underlying things, there's always going to be certain things that are going to creep up and all that, but that's just part of life. It's a bit like me, for instance. I had to basically biohack a lot of things and do genetic tests to understand a lot of things about myself, um, and realized. But I will do videos on that because there are certain genetics that actually affect people. I know a lot of people in the carnivore community say, well, all you need is basically just eat steak. And, to a large proportion of population, that probably is okay. Um, you know, it's way better than everybody else, whatever they're doing. A couple of eggs and steak is probably all you need. But there are going to be some genetic differences there where you may need a bit more retinol because you've basically got an Irish ancestry and have really down-regulated carotenoid conversion. So the carotenoids in grass-fed beef can't be as converted as easily. You could have my genes where you've got the MTHFR issue. So you need more riboflavin to correct that. I've done a video. So MTHFR is not really an issue. It's not a disease, actually. It's just in the past, people ate more organ meats of my ancestors. So as a consequence, certain things get down-regulated, and you need more of something. I've got a calcium. I know. Talk about genetics, and that's because both sides of my family have pastoral genes from goat herders and sheep herders, but primarily goat herders. If I go back, even though my mother comes from a lowlands, her great grandfather, and that came from Thedmore, which is a highland. It's basically a mountainous area. So basically, pastoral genes. And so my uptake of calcium is very much reduced. So it's not ancestral. So somebody who is a Hadza can absorb far more calcium from meat. I can't, because my ancestors consumed a lot of dairy. So I've basically got a genetic requirement to basically eat more, calcium-rich foods. It's not it's not so optional. It's a necessity because of genetics. Otherwise, I end up with a much lower calcium serum level. So, the last 10,000 years, there have been some genetic changes, and we have to accept that reality. So there are going to be some slight differences. So I don't subscribe to the steak-only approach for everyone. There are going to be slight differences, and I think that calcium-rich foods need to be considered. I've got people who have got Chinese background that basically got rid of their lactobacillus using things like kefirs and stuff like that, and certain gut bacteria like the lactobacillus type, things like that, to fix their ability to tolerate dairy products. So, anything's can be sorted. Yes. Yeah, I was checking that out earlier. Does it? Do they? Okay. Do they have a limited production there for some reason? Doris, can't see all your face. Oh, well, there's all my face. There's me. Ooh, like on the videos. I mean, no difference, but I got to use this on the live streams. Otherwise, the audio is, when I'm doing my video stuff, I basically do it and then I normalize the audio. That's why it takes time to process the damn stuff, because you have to do the normalization, to lift the audio so it's correct and all that sort of stuff. But when you're doing a live stream, you're going to have this close to me, so basically I get good audio. That's the priority, not this face. You can see it on my other videos where I don't use anything in front. I'm just bare like that. Yes. So, well, at least somebody that appreciates my face. Anyway, Yes. I also hail from the trunk estate in the Union. God. Michael, how are you, mate? Sounds great. Bacon and eggs. Yummy. Yeah, I actually went because I went to obviously the farmer's market. And I actually showed the image earlier. I did get a couple of packs. I still had from last week 2 packs, and I only 2 packs. Yeah, and I only bought another 3 of beef bacon. So regular bacon. I don't think I've got any in the fridge, or do I? Can't remember. Anyway, I still need to get some. Maybe, not sure. Nathan, but I've been twice a week now. I do beef bacon. I don't know. Am I addicted to it? Maybe. I do like it with 6 or 8 eggs fried. Yummy. Anyway, you're getting me hungry. He's doing better, John. He's doing much better. He's getting about. We've got him on half the medication, the blood thinners, obviously. I don't want him to be on those for too long term. And I've got him on this. It's a bit like nattokinase, which is an enzyme that clears up like a lot of the clots and bad proteins in the body. But it reacts with it's cheap, but like $20 a pop, but it reacts with medication. So I had to find an alternative. And there's another thing in the kinase family. It's called lumbrokinase. There's about 2 companies that I've come across anyway that actually provide that supplement. It's a very recent one. There hasn't been a lot of research on it. The only cancer research, there's 2 studies based on that lumbrokinase inhibits cell proliferation when it comes to, and sort of clears up some of the damage caused by stomach cancers. So, I still haven't. I downloaded the studies, but I haven't looked into them. So I'm not going to claim anything. I don't know the quality of the studies, how they were done, their results and stuff like that. So I'll just hold off on that until I've thoroughly looked into them. But this one basically does not react along the same pathways as the blood thinners. So there's not going to be any, cross reaction with the blood thinners. So that's the key thing. I don't want to put that at any risk. But on the other hand, it does seem to do something similar, but it's much more expensive, like $70 a pop. It's expensive compared to the $20, $30 you get for the other stuff, the nattokinase. But unfortunately, those ones react. So the lumbrokinase is the one that I'm using for Dad. So I got him enough for, 6 months approximately, give or take. So, well, that should play out, and he's going to go in for a scan in a month's time, then in 3 months' time. I'm going to try and get the doctor to do a bit earlier, after the first month, then do another month and see how things sort of come about. So just so I know that, do I have to change the dosing? How fast are things happening? Stuff like that. So I'm not experimenting on Dad in that regard, but I do want to know, because it may be useful for other people, because there are a lot of other people taking jabs still, and, relatives and people that have got people in already that state. And so I need to know what can help those sort of people. You don't want to be on blood thinners for the rest of your life or stuff like that. So, it is a damn bloody worry, all this sort of stuff. Yeah, but he's doing better. That's the key thing. Yes, at least he's listening now. And as I said to him, if you get Omicron or COVID again, I said to his doctor, just make sure, I'll give you a call. Just make sure you give him the antivirals. That's all he's taking. He's agreed. John, his doctor, has agreed with that. So we're in agreement. So we had a bit of a discussion. So, yeah. Actually, his doctor was quite pretty good. He said, look, I'm under pressure by the government to do this to older people. He said, and basically he basically said Fauci is a criminal. He should be basically put away. That was my dad's doctor's opinion. He's a pretty good bloke. I mean, he did a high protein diet years ago to lose weight. He's done a lot of things like that. So he's open-minded. He's not, closed-minded as a person. And he said basically this was manufactured. He basically believes in that view. I've sort of in more recent times come to sort of a similar conclusion myself, because after looking at some of the literature, but could it happen naturally? I'm still a bit on the fence, but at the end of the day, they stuffed up. And the actual lady, he actually knows some of the researchers. I was surprised. The lady that actually was involved in the research work in the Wuhan lab, she was actually trained in a ANU, the Australian National University, a couple of years back. And she was working on similar type of viruses in Australia in research, and then took that research back to China. And we know that she was also associated with the money that Fauci provided. So there's definitely, let's say, a smoking gun. 100% conclusiveness we don't have, but there is a smoking gun, and this hasn't been fully investigated, and that's the reality in that regard. So, but it just shows that even a person that's well aware of this mischievousness has a belief that Fauci should be criminally charged. Even he basically is compelled and pressured to comply as a general practitioner, as a doctor. So he's under the pump as well by the government to basically jab the elderly. So I didn't realise that the government was putting pressure on the doctors, and potentially, who knows, even threatening their license. So, so there you go. I learned something about our government in Australia, how draconian and how authoritarian it is, and how much it has very little respect for doctors' independence in determining the best approach for their patients. Basically, now you're just told you will comply with these rules, and basically, you won't use independent judgment. I mean, I thought doctors were trained to basically assess individually patients and use independent judgment, but apparently I must be wrong, but that's the sort of crazy world we live in now. Yes, anyway, had to have a bit of a rant. Sorry. Need suggestions for my friend. It's 100-pound dog, arthritis, has hard time getting up, raw meat, takes to an MSN already, thanks. Time. Deterrent depleted water would help. That's the thing that when I mentioned about, with the differences in my last supplementary video, why, for instance, the taurine plays a big role, why the difference is, but also maybe this dog's been eating a lot of kibble in the past and still got a lot of deuterium load that needs to be flushed out. Now, that if it eats a lot of raw meat and a lot of raw fat in particular, raw fat, if it's fed a lot of fatty raw fat, animal fat, that will help clear out some of that deuterium, which is cheaper than basically, than buying deuterium depleted water. I'd basically be feeding the dog heaps and heaps of fat. Just go to the butcher, buy cheap fat, bags and bags of it, and feed the dog. So to basically reduce the deuterium load within the dog, and then things will improve in that regard. So, and really, for when it comes to, it takes time to heal, because if your mitochondria have been damaged for some time, then the dog's mitochondria will take time to heal. So, the taurine will help. Now, in terms of veterinary approaches to dogs and all that, I have done no research. So, obviously these things are fine, but when it comes to, is the dog sleeping in a place where it doesn't have blue light exposure at night? So if the dog is living in a highly lit environment, that may also have an effect on its melatonin production. So there's a lot of factors that can play, Deborah, in that regard. But once anyone's actually damaged, humans, dogs, whatever, it takes time to heal. That's the reality. It's everybody wants a quick fix, but the reality is it's really much harder. I mean, I wish I had solutions for people, but the reality is it's not always easy. Obviously, for cats, it's actually worse. Dogs do produce some level of they can take, they can produce. It helps them to give taurine because they are, they need probably more to heal and stuff like that. But cats are probably the ones that really need it because they produce minuscule, very little, tiny amounts. I think that little tiny amount they produce is just between to be able to cover them when they may not be getting enough food in between meals, to cover them for their needs. That very little at that rate. I remember reading a veterinary blog from one of the veterinaries. He quoted some bloody study, but I never really looked into it about cats and the small amount that they do produce. It's tiny because a lot of people say, oh, they produce no taurine. That's bullshit. Cats do produce taurine, but so little. All cats do. It's the reason why big cats like, tigers, lions and all that, they go for the organ meats, which are very high in taurine. They go for the organ meats primarily, and then they don't eat for a couple of days because they've got so much nutrient density, so many micronutrients. They don't need to. So that's why they go for those, but specifically because they can't synthesize enough. They're very little, all the cats, the cat families, So that's how they approach things. But I think that deuterium load, and I mean, I personally wouldn't fork out the money for a dog deuterium depleted water unless it had cancer. But if it doesn't have cancer, I'd go for a lot of fat. Just giving it a lot of fat will basically change the profile in terms of reducing within the cytosol, within the inner. That the cytosol is basically, when I use that terminology, that just means the inner side, the inner parts of around the nucleus, but the inner part of that cell is where you'll find 2H's, it's called deuterium. And so that can be an issue if there's still a lot of reverse Krebs cycle happening within the actual mitochondria. It can suck in more of that deuterium, exacerbating the damage. And there may be justification for a small period of time, a couple of months of deuterium depleted water to slow down that damage so then you can heal. So you stop the damage, then you basically give up the water because you're getting the fat, hydrating from fat, and you're getting deuterium depleted sources of energy from that fat. And slowly, with taurine, the melatonin, good, better sleep and stuff like that, you're improving the reparative part, that healing part of the mitochondria. And so then you're able to utilize energy. So your oxidative phosphorylation, that means using the electron chains to produce ATP, that will actually start increasing and rising and things will start normalizing again. So it's really important. Anyway, that's part of my hypothesis, which I believe is correct. But anyway, people want to argue with me anytime. The Bart to Harry pipeline is real. Good morning. G'day, Hard Logic. Yes, it is. Any thoughts on apple cider vinegar? Not really required, but I can tell you, I do have apple cider vinegar in my place, and I don't use it for any particular reason other than basically when I'm, there are certain types of meats like that I like to put a bit of apple cider vinegar to soften up, and then I'll slow cook them. So, and there are a few things that, like lemon juice, I'll put on my fish. So I mix like butter with lemon juice to basically give it, it's really nice. I love the taste. And I use lemon juice on pork. I love pork with lemon juice. Not the other meats, like beef, no way. So beef, the most I'll put is butter on, but and as an alternative, also I do for my pork, I do sometimes use a bit of just a smidget, a small amount, and mix it in and use it as a sort of a garnish for my pork. And but I wouldn't use apple cider vinegar for fish. Don't really like it. Just lemon juice and butter. So it's more for me as a condiment rather than any particular thing in that regard. Some people use it when don't have sufficient stomach pH, but I prefer using HDL supplementation until you've suppressed the pathogenic bacteria like H. pylori because usually that's if you've been on a plant-based diet, you'll have much higher of that, suppressing stomach acidity, and then taurine that basically improves stomach acidity and regulates stomach acidity. So I'd rather do that sort of strategy. So for me, it's more to use it as a condiment rather than any sort of, most of these therapeutic, they're all associated. It's just junk. Nothing's been proven. So I wouldn't really do it for that purpose. And I wouldn't use too much because it's not very good for your teeth. So in that regard, teeth enamel, any of that sort of stuff. So yes, I just use it as a flavoring, small amounts, things like that, but I don't use excessive amounts. G'day, Dean. Harry, clarify the protocol of taking taurine before training. 90 minutes to saturate the body. If you take it half an hour, it takes about, it depends on the person. So it varies. And we don't know whether it's due to genetics or not. I don't. And I haven't found anything but it takes about anywhere between an hour to 90 minutes to saturate the body. So I usually will say to people, do it 90 minutes before. I mean, most people take their creatine and things like that, or like L-citrate, a nitric oxide booster about half an hour before training, which is fine. But if you're going to basically take taurine, it has to be, personally, I do it 90 minutes before. But could it work at 60 minutes before? Yeah, but I don't know your genetics. And so 90 minutes for me, I know, look, there's going to be bodybuilders out there that are going to disagree with me, so be it. I don't care. But I'm just saying what I do based on, that it takes some time to saturate throughout the body. Don't ask me why. We don't know. It's just one of those things that takes that amount of time. So seems to take that amount of time it takes a certain level of time in a number of animals that they've actually tried it, saturation levels, to get around the body. I don't know, maybe it's due to the amount of taut, T-A-U-T, taut transporters in the gut, that there is a sort of a rate limiting amount that they can take up at any one time. So, yeah, I think it probably is related to that, but I've never seen any research. That's speculation on my part, Nick. So take it with a grain of salt. But I suspect that that's the most plausible reason why the uptake is slower and it takes them out. Yeah. And also the gut requires quite a bit of it to regulate itself. So maybe that's another issue that, this sort of cycling and reuse and stuff like that. Then there's also the other part, which is the bile type. So that plays a role a bit as well. So, yeah. Okay. Not hola, but ola. Okay. Got it. I just learned something. Ola. Hope I pronounced it properly. I actually like that. Ola. Yeah. Actually, it actually sounds nice. Just busting your balls a bit, Uncle Harry. Oh well, I got Hello Kitty. I got my brother. I got my sisters to do that for me. A few other people as well in my life. Then they wonder why I ignore them sometimes. Anyway, yeah, just my normal self. Dad's the one that's on the mm, doing it tough. Let's put it that way. But he's only got himself to blame. But anyway, I still feel sorry for him, and I still am worried for him, even though I put on a brave face so he doesn't have to worry and he just gets on with his life, because that's the best thing he can do. Quick, G'day Lama, quick, tell us about small leucine-rich prostaglandin strips or leucine-rich repeat your protein one, Mr. Is not your thing, Mr. Deuterium might be taken. You want a long conversation again, don't you? I'll send you an email. All the messages. Didn't you actually get the point last time with the other email? You got it wrong. Anyway, and you admitted it. Anyway, so we're not going to have a half-hour conversation on the live streams. Short and sweet. You know how it plays out. All the messages at the bottom of the screen is, that part. Oh, well. Can't help you there. Can't help you. It's just the way that all the setup is. So with the cameras and all that, it's all set up like that. I can't adjust it anyway. So, oh well. My eyes. Anyway, Doris, you got to get used to, well, you'd agree with anything, Lama. He's another person that takes a piss out of me. KL, how are you, mate? Also, Deuterium video was fire. Thank you. Appreciate the thumbs up for it. Yeah, I thought it was a really good one to cover a number of points. The reason why the mitochondrial theory is slightly wrong in some respects, and why obviously the genetic one is completely wrong in a lot of respects, except the activation of the oncogenes. But the real reason why it doesn't happen capriciously. It happens because there is a constant signaling interaction between energy within the cell, energy status. Energy status is what drives whether oncogenes get activated or not. So, reverting back to a primitive energy system. That's all it is. Cancer is just a primitive energy system reverting back. But also when you revert back to those genetics were also cell independence and survival. So that's the other part of the problem. But, you can reverse it. Well, according to me and my hypothesis, others may disagree, but they've got no solutions whatsoever and haven't even come up with a proper understanding. They've just got a reductionist approach to their research and a reductionist approach to their understanding of, disease. And I don't think most of them even understand the reverse Krebs cycle and and deuterium. So they can tell you exactly, in terms of biochemistry, but they don't understand its interaction with other things and signaling molecules and all that. That's their problem. They have this, anybody can tell you lipolysis does this, glycolysis does this does this, or whatever, people like, Danny and other people like that, the Ray Peats and all that, they just give you this reduction of stuff to sound smart or whatever. But they don't understand that the complex interactions that are happening in the body, they don't basically, let's say, push the envelope with their mind to basically try and understand these relationships. That's their problem. Actually, I left a comment. Danny came back and commented. Apparently, he doesn't want to debate any other carnivores, neither Bart or any other carnivore. And he's basically said that he's not interested. Since 2018, I'm not interested in discussing with him. Surprise, surprise. I did leave a comment for Bart, but he missed it. It was at the end of his live stream. But yeah, pretty much. that doesn't surprise me anyway, because some of the stuff that he was saying, just wasn't even related to the Randall cycle. He was talking about, redox, what does that have to do? The enzymes that are involved in redox, what does that have to do with that they're involved whether you're engaged in the Randall cycle or you're not? I mean, it was just weird. When I heard that, I just had to laugh. I just realized that the guy has a lot of, let's say, gaps in his knowledge, and he's making a whole lot of assumptions about a lot of things. So, yes, scary, but they do exist, and it's the majority of YouTube people out there, unfortunately. They've got no idea. Wish I knew you in 2020 when I was in Tassie. Oh, well, there's always going to be a holiday at some point in your life. My husband was in the auto accident recently. Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah, I hope he gets well soon and still has lots of damage, the muscles, bruising, swelling of his legs. Okay, and you've basically put down how much taurine should he be supplementing. You ran out of space. Yep, I understand. He's 6'5". Big boy, big boy. Look, for healing, you really need to get the protein up. You really need to get the protein in. Because you're going to be using a lot of enzymes and a lot of basically material to rebuild and heal the body. So taurine plays a role in that regard. For healing, I would also put a leucine supplement, 6 grams of leucine in there, with every, 3, if he's doing 2 meals a day, 3 grams with every meal, together with a couple of grams of taurine, like 2 grams. You don't need massive amounts, unless you're doing other type of therapeutics, fixing up a gut, fixing up anxiety, other things. That's when you need higher doses where we want to recorrect things. But, general to amplify muscle protein synthesis and lower myostatin slightly to get better results quicker in terms of healing and repair. Yeah, that's the sort of combo. So 3 grams of leucine with every meal, so 6 total. His 2 main meals, 2 grams of taurine and all that. And I also would get a bit of vasodilation in there and put a gram of L-citrulline in between, 1 gram for each one of those meals. That will help also, as vasodilation is an important part of the healing process. Nitric oxide. Yeah. Anyway, you're welcome. Oh, thank you. Oops. Well, that far behind. Well, that's nothing new. With me, you guys know me. Takes time to answer these questions. Thank you. Appreciate the donation. Oops. Canberra is the same, full of politicians and public servants. Yeah, that's true. Do you drive past the parliament and wave to them? Wave to them is what I meant. It would be. It would be. I'm with Dad with his situation. I'm sort of in the same sort of yes. What could cause twitching and weakness in the legs? There's a lot of things that can actually cause things. There can be sort of neuropathy type symptoms. There can be electrolyte imbalances, which taurine will sort of sort out over time. A couple of grams is probably all you need a day. 2 grams usually will sort it out for most people. And I would say if that doesn't help, then I would basically get myself checked out to find out whether you do have peripheral neuropathy or anything like that. Maybe an underlying existing condition and all that. At least then you'll know. And if you do, then get back to me and we'll discuss some approaches that you can actually use. But you got to know first what you got. If you don't know, you're in the dark. And from a YouTube channel, nobody can do actually testing on anyone to find out and all that. But it can be, things like that sort of stuff. If it's electrolytes, it's easy. Eat a bit more protein or take a bit of supplementation of taurine. It usually fixes up all that. Consume less water so you're not dumping too many electrolytes, which is another issue that a lot of people do. Our ancestors never did. Look at tribal people out in arid deserts. They hydrate with fat, body fat, not so much water. It's bullshit, that whole thing. And it's high in deuterium. So why would you want to put that stuff in your body anyway? 150 parts per million. So yes, anyway, can be higher and lower depending on the sources. Anyway, but on average, it's about that. I think in Australia, most tap water is about 155 parts per million. So in most places, don't ask me why. I don't know. But it tends to be slightly higher. And other places, like you go to Siberia and certain other areas, even lower, can be down to 130, 138, So in alpine regions, even lower. So it can vary all over the place. Milk is hydrating, yes, it is. And because you make butter from milk, you make basically butter, you make cheeses and all that, and they are all basically in the 130 or lower range. So if they've got more protein, so milk, because it's got it doesn't have as much protein and all that, it tends to be lower in deuterium. Where cheese, where it's concentrated protein, but you're not using for energy to oxidize it in the mitochondria protein unless you've got some derangement of mitochondrial respiration, and then you've basically so Daniel, I wouldn't worry about milk. It's much lower in that regard. It's not where butter is, which is about a 124. Can be lower if it's grass finished, but it will be within the range of 130 and 124, somewhere there. So it can vary in that regard. So milk's fine in that regard, and the small amount of milk sugar, you're getting so much of the liquid, the water, which is much lower in deuterium anyway. It's been deteriorated by the cow itself. Animals like us can lower their deuterium content in that sort of stuff. It's only in spring that it goes over 130, like into the, like you can get up to 138 or 135 or whatever in spring, and that's because of the calving. So it's around the calving period, the milk around there is going to be much higher for that reason, because the growth factor for the calves. And I usually lower my consumption of. I actually look at when the actual, the cheese and all that was made and all that. I usually work out a couple of weeks, and I go, oh, okay, so that was the date on it. I don't buy it. And I usually buy more stuff in certain outside spring production periods. It's just what I do. I usually lower my consumption about that time. For those reasons. Yeah, I know it may sound a bit weird, and I think in some videos you misspoke glycolysis with maybe pathways, because I can't seem to find it. Did I? Maybe. I don't know. Or maybe you didn't hear it, because I do have an Aussie accent, an Australian accent, and sometimes I can, the way I say things, you may have not picked up on it properly. That's a possibility. We're humans after all. We do slip up in the way we express things. The previous video was monster truck on fire, fueled by pure heavy hydrogen, propelled to the next galaxy and back 5 times over. A treat, really. I'm happy you like that. Yes. Oh, the rocket ship. Yes, I should call it a rocket video. Sound like possible stress and mineral depletion. Yeah, as I said, taurine can help with stress and mineral and that sort of stuff. But it could be something else as well. We can't rule out anything unless he gets tested. So first try the taurine. Doesn't work, then consider testing to find out whether there's any other underlying issue that you've never addressed, or So good to have you here, Elizabeth. Yes, I haven't had. So how are you and your biochemistry lecturer going? Is he still giving you a hard time? Did you actually use some of the material that I actually mentioned to you last time? To put him in his place. God, I can't believe that academics are still just talking nonsense. Anyway, hope things are going well with your education anyway. Take care. Started taking gastro, and for about 2 weeks now, noticed I seem to be getting a little more backed up. Is there a break-in period, or is it just messing with my beam unnecessarily? Usually what can happen is some people, when they get basically get more lactobacillus and stuff like that in, Necro Kitty had something similar. She basically had diarrhea for 2 years. And then basically we've got her on the BioGaia. It suppressed all those pathogenic bacteria that were causing the problem. And then she was consuming a bit of dairy product. And because she still hadn't sorted out her gut microbiome entirely, she started getting constipation. Then I had her on kefir for a certain period of time. She started doing kefir, and that basically, you could say, gave her a wider variety of gut bacterial strains, and it normalized her poo. So sometimes you may be going through that sort of stage and all that. Yeah. Now, Bart has a Discord, and if Lukey would like to put it on, you could contact Necro and actually discuss with her the details, and save me having to basically go all over that stuff again. And she's actually quite good in giving you the recipe that she used. I forget it at the moment. I can't remember it, for her kefir setup, because she actually got a number of bacterial strains. For that, we went through the list, but I just can't remember them off the top of my head at the moment. And so contact her, and she'll give you a list of what you need to put in the kefir to basically get the same results. Thanks, Lukey. I should record them somewhere. It's in one of my emails, I think, but anyway. Effects on sunlight on growth and development of children. Great stuff. I think it's really important. G'day, Lukey.
Hello, Harry. Hello, everyone.
Good to have you here, mate. It's late at night. He's in Lukey, for those who are new to this channel, Lukey lives in Brazil, and he's been a strong supporter of Bart's and my channel for quite some time now, for a couple of years now. And yes, and so Lukey makes the occasional appearance and all that. Lukey used to have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and with a carnivore diet and with taurine and stuff like that, and vitamin D, getting it up to the therapeutic levels of vitamin D to deal with the autoimmune part, pretty much sorted out. And that is the other, since we're talking about autoimmunity, sunlight is not only for growth, but also really important for autoimmunity. Vitamin D, there are thousands and thousands of studies associating. Obviously, we can't experiment on people, locking them in labs and using different dosages because it's unethical. But the reality is that, sunlight has been really important for our species for, and not only for our species over thousands of years, but for millions of years for all animals on this planet. So, it's important. So, I mean, indoors isn't the natural way of being. Even our circadian rhythms, and growth hormone secretion, actually, especially for children, but also to maintain good muscle skeletal structures for older people, is really tied into the circadian rhythms. And if you're not getting out into the sun, you're, I say to people early in the morning as the sun's coming up, get out there and, get the signaling. Midday, get out into the sun, get the signaling. In the evening, as the sun's going down, get out there and signal the body so it knows that it's evening. And what happens is then hormones and many other systems in your body start working properly. Also a good idea to use blue blocking glasses to minimize in the evening. If anybody's around on the other live stream, they'll see that I usually wear those blue blocking glasses in the evenings. And I've got red, like that last video that I did, it was really red, because usually I turn off the other light and I've only got the red light, and it goes, I know some people don't like that, but you know what? I'm not going to damage my body just to basically make it, I mean, you come for the information, not for this, whatever you want to call it, face, so that's how I saw it. Yeah, it's not only important for kids, but also for us as well, adults, for all humans, for all life on the planet. The sun is a healing thing. We've been brainwashed to believe just because we've had seed oils in our diet and damaged and incorporated that garbage in our which is highly oxidized and rancid in our skin, we don't consume enough animal foods to get enough of both the retinols, and also, you don't need excess amounts, but you need some, and getting enough niacin, which is UV protective. That's your real best sunscreen. Eat piggy, tuna and stuff like that, and you'll get a good sunscreen. And that's the thing. And a lot of the actual wild animals have actually got, and other than pigs, a lot of the other wild animals in nature tend to have much higher levels of niacin. That's another thing some people seem to forget when they promote like a beef-only type approach. But I'll leave it at that without arguing with the whole carnivore community, because my opinions on a lot of that sort of stuff. But anyway.
Yeah, I'd say anecdotally, probably doing a more mixed approach was really helpful for me, because I was deficient in a lot of things,
Precisely.
So the eggs, the fish, the pork, those are all good additions.
Yeah. We humans lived along rivers and coastal areas before we actually created civilization, and then cut down forests and penetrated in the interior. If we look at all tribal settlements are along river systems, because that's where the animals are, and also access to fish and other things which every single study that I've looked at actually shows high ruminants, small amount of fish in the diet. All these humans, both in the past and even in societies that were more carnivorous, like the ancient Greeks, which I did the ancient Greeks on how carnivorous they were in the pre-Hellenistic period. So the Hellenistic period that came after was after Alexander the Great had gone east, and a lot of other things had come, let's say, contraindicated stuff had come into the Greek world, like sugar from India and many other things that should have stayed there. But anyway, they did come west after, blame Alexander. Anyway, yes, very important. Yeah, look, it's very important that we bump up insulin. We're not in a catabolic state or continuous. So eating protein is a very healthy thing to do, and we need it for our bodies, for muscle protein synthesis, to get sufficient in. Well, yep, that's all about the stuff that we were talking about earlier. So I'll move. Yeah, it could be oxalate dumping. If you've just switched to carnivore diet, it could be oxalate dumping. So to protect your kidneys, you need to basically use food grade citric acid. But at this stage, at least use things like apple cider vinegar or lemon juice to deal with this sort of dumping at this stage. And I would also incorporate a bit of calcium, because it will bind to calcium and take out some calcium, and it may reduce your serum calcium levels. That's another thing people say. And I go, I'll be getting heart palpitations. I'm going, okay, that's due to the binding of the oxalates that are being dumped, that are binding to the calcium and reducing your serum calcium levels. So keep that in mind if you're getting heart palpitations. We always are here. We always are here, mate. It's pretty much, we take it easy. I basically, I try to keep it pretty even keel with a bit of humor, and hopefully some good information. Yep, we covered that. Only the the fluids itself. No, it's actually, the outer part. It's actually concentrated in the white part, the skin part. That's where the oxalate is, pretty much. But in the actual fluids, it's got more citric acid. It's got a bit of oxalate, but very little. The majority of it is citric acid, which is what you need. Or you can use apple cider vinegar as an alternative until you get a food grade. Because some people, if they order from iHerb like a food grade, citric acid supplement to put in water and dilute and drink, it may take 3 weeks to 4 weeks. Well, you need something immediately now. Lemon juice is an option. Apple cider vinegar is an option. But lemon juice probably better because of the higher citric acid content in it. Plus adding a bit of extra, as I said earlier, a bit of extra calcium in by some dairy products to basically also bind that and prevent a lowering of serum, especially if you've got like myself, you've got a because I actually, when I had really severe palpitations. I know why, because basically I have a lower uptake due to genetics of calcium. So I need to get more as a consequence. So I don't know what your genetics are, Latha, no idea, but I'm saying that if you actually, you see, I'm taking the citrate, but it's not basically resolving. You probably may need a bit more calcium, so play around with that, because without genetic testing, I can't really say where you're at or what. You've got to play around and see, and then the size of your body, so how big you are, the volume of space that your individual levels are going to be different from everyone else. So you have to play around with those things. This sort of RDA bullshit, these arbitrary numbers are just ridiculous. I don't even, adults need to take this. Somebody's a giant, somebody's a short person. Well, really? The RDI is the same. That short person probably should be taking about similar levels to some like a child, nearly. You know what I mean? Like an average child. So yeah, it's not the bloody same. There's a lot of nonsense out there with. These are just committees that just sit around and expert committees. Yes, we know. Well, there you go. Yeah, look, I agree with her. It's really in the rind. So, like I would not, like people use in cooking, they sometimes use the skin of the actual lemon. Well, that is high oxalate. That's where the oxalates are sort of concentrated. So that's not the part you want to use, obviously. So go
I've
ahead.
Also heard that it has goitrogens as well.
It does.
I haven't confirmed it. Okay.
But it's not very high. It's not to be worried.
Sure.
Don't worry about it. It's got a few other anti-nutrients, but it's not like excessive like you find in other plants. So I think it's some, when people talk about this, it's a bit of a beat up. And if somebody says, I'm more concerned about the oxalates in the flesh, why I would say give it a miss completely. But the juice is fine.
Sure.
And some people, that's all they need. And some people, they can tolerate that. Some people can't. I know that Hello Kitty, she basically used lemon juice because she just could not tolerate. I gave her some, of that citric acid, sort of the food grade stuff, and she tried it and she said, I can't consume this. She said it's just impossible. It's just really difficult. And some people just struggle. It's just the reality. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, Mike. Lectins, tannins, saponins, oxalates. Yeah, the whole bloody lot. It's just there's a lot of, and they vary depending on the plant, obviously. So they vary quite widely. I am looking at the live at the chat on the other side, just to yes. That's in the cancer playlist. If you go into the cancer playlist, I do cover that. It covers the apoptosis effect and sort of the healing parts and stuff like that. I sort of talk within those videos, but yeah, do check them out. Well, it doesn't have massive amounts of vitamin C anyway. And as I said, I don't use lemon juice other than for my pork and fish because I like it. I just grew up in Greece with skewered pork in lemon juice, and I love that combination. It's just really nice taste. I don't like lemon juice on other, like I won't put on other steaks. Yeah, I don't like it, So especially beef, I just lemon juice and beef, just foul. I don't like it. I'll put butter.
I also think it's terrible.
Yeah. Butter's great on butter is really on its own on top of a steak is really nice, but lemon juice, but for pork it really combines well, and white fish really combines well.
Yes.
So but white fish, lemon juice, and then butter. I usually put the butter first so it melts, and then I put lemon juice on top. And white fish, that combination is just perfect. But those two are the only ones that I use specifically. So, yes, I'll shred my carnivore card later on. Sometimes people seem to forget 70% is super carnivore. Hyper carnivore is over 85%. And I do most of the time well over 95%. So, it's just these little things. I'm not, I think people that say 100%. Yeah, look, people, if they're really sick and they've really got a number of issues, 100% may be what they need to do. Like, Michaela Peterson and many other people that have really got a lot of issues and really can't tolerate anything. So, but yeah, we shouldn't generalize things. Now, are certain things contraindicated? Yes, they are. But, if not, they are doing such a minor thing, let's not get too wound up. Some people will get far too much. Hearing loss. You were saying? Is hearing loss ancestrally consistent? Is it inevitable or preventable? Well, if you've been on a species-appropriate diet all your life, you're probably not going to get much of a hearing loss. It's really a modern world. Most ancestral people never were eating species-inappropriate diets. Simple. They weren't. So they were getting sufficient. People don't realize one of the actual effects to the auditory system, if you're on a low species appropriate diet, like low taurine intake, it actually affects, especially cats. They will get hearing loss. They will get visual loss, like a severe macular degeneration and stuff like that. So a lot of these sort of eye problems, neurological problems and stuff like that are related to taurine deficiency in cats. So we see it in cats. We don't see it. We see it very slowly in humans. It's because it takes a very long time. We can still endogenously produce a certain amount. But cats are the obvious, and children are also. Children, we notice it in children, prenatals, and like kids that are born prematurely. If we used to get neurological issues, blindness, hearing problems, and all that, and then they realized, oh, what's in breast milk? Shitloads, because you can't synthesize until much later on as a child. There's heaps and heaps. It's just breast milk has one of the highest concentrations of basically taurine, because it's involved in the brain development and growth and all that. Actually, it's involved in the production of new neurons. So that's another reason probably why we're becoming demented in older age nowadays. Hearing, there's a lot of studies that show, like ringing in the ears, like tinnitus and stuff like that. I used to have tinnitus. I don't. So that's also associated, but they're only like animal-induced studies where they've actually deliberately caused tinnitus in rats, and then they've given them high dose of taurine and repair and fix the problem. So my tinnitus actually took much longer, but eventually it went away. But that's because it was it took longer to heal. Well, remember, rats only live for about 2 years. They've got a very high metabolic rate, and they turn over cells very fast. We don't. We take a decade to turn over cells. So it takes much longer to heal and turn over bad cells and bad proteins and rebuild them and all that. But if you stick to a nutrient-dense animal species-appropriate diet, eventually you will heal. It takes time. You've got to be patient. Anyway, I agree. Nowadays it does. Uh, HD had blood results pretty high. IDH, kidneys are good. CBC was fine. Interesting through decent T lymphocytes. Guess idea was from muscle micro tears due to restarting exercise. Most likely, HD, most likely. Just monitor it. See, these things you got to sometimes monitor in that regard. But that's really good. But you're doing taurine and stuff like that, and vitamin D, and that will increase naive T lymphocytes, which is good. So I've been saying this for ages. In the COVID era, taurine and vitamin D to deal with. This was before the jabs or anything. My first video was on this subject matter, the reasons for it. So yeah, and pretty much subsequent I don't think everybody agrees, but I don't care. There's research that quite clearly shows that that's what happens. Stem cells for T lymphocytes are basically vitamin D dependent, and then the activation of the naive T cells in the thymus, again, taurine dependent. So, I mean, the research is there if anybody wants to go and look at it. Fortunately, nobody does, because they want to sell drugs, they want to sell jabs and everything else. Just the way of the world. Pro4X TRD Pro. Interesting name. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink caffeine. But when I consume taurine over 2 grams or too close to bed, it keeps me awake. Any idea? You're having it too late. You're having it too late, actually. That's why. Never, not before bed. It's got to be a couple of hours before, So, don't know why. It seems to basically reset this. It's out of sync with circadian rhythms. Basically, is the simple explanation. About 7 o'clock is when your basically melatonin starts rising. I usually say to people between 6 and 7, or 6 o'clock even better, then have your taurine. And so that will slowly diffuse throughout the body, and then it will bring down cortisol. Obviously, blue blocking glasses and blue blocking things will also bring down cortisol. And then, because you can still have high cortisol levels. And if you take it really, what happens, you get this dip in melatonin later in the evening, because it rises, then it dips, then it rises again. It's got this and you're probably taking it at the wrong time. It's wrong timing, basically. So 6 o'clock, we want to bring cortisol down because you've probably been stressed and whatever, So, it's just basically, Shelley says, I take 4 grams before bed. Doesn't bother me at all. Shrugs. Fair enough. But basically, I do believe in taking it within circadian rhythms in that regard, specifically because I want to suppress cortisol in that early part of the evening, and I want to amplify. Now, if you take 4 grams like Shelley does later on, that probably will bring down cortisol and amplify melatonin, but outside circadian rhythms. So that's why she's getting the benefit. But some people react differently. It's I don't know why. Don't ask me. It's strange. People have different reactions for a whole lot of different reasons. So not everybody reacts the same thing to anything, to caffeine or any molecule. We all have slight variations in genetic response. There are some general stuff, but then there are specifics. But I'd say you may be more sensitive to circadian rhythms than Shelley, or myself. I sometimes take it about 9 o'clock or late. I forget and I'll take it later. Doesn't seem to have any negative effect for me, like Shelley. But, and for her, it helped her with horrible nighttime leg cramps. Yeah, it does, because it regulates the fluids and electrolytes. So it's really important. Yes. Yeah. So try earlier is basically the thing. You got to experiment and play around with these things and see what really works for you. Anyway, that was, before. Move on, because I'm still way bloody behind. Oh, it's raining out there again. Bloody hell. That's
wow.
Yeah, it started raining. I just can hear it.
That's such a coincidence. It started raining here as well.
Did it? Oh, there you go.
Yep.
God thinks he's funny. Just shows how behind I am, because Shelley's going, I'm back, and she's putting all these comments in there.
Yep.
I'm really behind, so I have to move on to get to the to questions. Yeah. Yep. Ah, yes. I did the 23andMe test myself. At the time, they were actually on their $99 one. They really provided like a comprehensive, I'm still in the old one, but the recent $99 one now, they've actually taken a lot of stuff out. They've reduced it, which I find very annoying. And now they try to force people to do the more expensive one, which is the $199, to get more of the stuff. So, and a lot of the other companies have done the same thing. They got now the standard minimalistic one at $99, around that $100 range. And if you want more for a whole lot of other genetics and whatever, you got to pay a bit more. So they are milking it because more people are interested now. And so I have to still use my old data. I've still got my old data file from 2017, and I still use that. I don't download the current one because they've stripped out a large part of, I think 25% of the genes have been stripped out. So even when I go within the 23andMe and check on, where the search engine is, it won't come up because they've downgraded. So I have to literally use those ones that don't come up and then go to Snippedia from my old text file that I've got. Well, it was zipped up, and use that stuff. And that's what I load on all the sites to look at all the other genes, because I know that they've taken so much away, which is annoying. So, yeah, look, it seems like 23andMe do provide a superior product in terms of, their Hoppler groups for, ancestral, far more precise, where a lot of the others are very imprecise in many regards, where they've really improved so if you're interested in the ancestral stuff, they are spot on, even though that's not the main focus of their product, but they're actually using the proper Hoppler groups. That means, what are the main Hoppler groups? Because they're main groups. There are Han Chinese. There are certain major Hoppler groups where people have lived for a very long time, and they've got key pronounced genetics that don't exist in other parts. And that's how we can differentiate between different racial groups. Now, a lot of the others have become very woke, and they don't do that. And they say, which country are you from? And then they give you this bullshit ancestral sort of thing, which is not really true. If you want the real truth, 23andMe do provide you very good ancestral, Hoppler group related, what your real basis is, So So that's the key one. And they do provide a lot of other for, the key ones like the methylation pathways, the detoxification pathways. So they've got all that in the basic one, which is now some of the more other disease types and the more, you could say the esoteric stuff there, you may need to go for the I think it's usually about $199 US, and sometimes they have it discounted down to about 149 sometimes. Not so you've got to keep an eye on the site. So keep an eye on the 23andMe site. When they've got it on special, buy it then, purchase it then when they've got the second tier. The third tier, I don't think people need it unless they've got really severe genetic disorders and stuff like that. And then they do some rare, stuff into, really rare diseases and stuff like that. When there, it may be useful. But most people, the second tier is fine for most people. And if it's only $50 extra for the additional information you're getting, it's worth it. So I would go for the one when it's at 149 rather than when it's 200. So wait until they put it on special, then go for it. 23andMe is the one that I've used. Now, people say, well, I'm concerned about my privacy and information. I agree that it can be a problem, but that's a problem with all of them. Let me put it this way. Every single one of these companies are monetizing it to use it. You don't need to use your actual true name. Got it? So you could actually put up, you can use a generic name. You don't have to use your actual legal name. And you can pay via PayPal, which means that they don't get the information. They just get the money from PayPal. It's a PayPal transaction. So they don't know who you are, the company, to be able to use your details, like your credit card details or whatever, for to basically create a profile on you, to basically then sell the data, which is what they do. It's another income stream for all the companies do it. So, and they usually sell it. Oh, we're doing it. We're supporting research. Yeah. Well, they are in some regards. They do actually do support research out there, and they do ask questions, and they say, well, do you have these sort of, they'll ask you certain questions so they can get a better profile on you genetically. And if as long as your name isn't the real name, well, that can be useful for experiments where they're doing. But one key thing I always remind people: your genes are not your destiny. You can turn them off or turn them on depending on what you eat. It just tells you susceptibilities. Always remember that. And there's also, you have to look at the actual data. Is it associated or is it, a strong inference? There's a difference between the two. Like we know with the MTHFR, the 667 gene, we know quite clearly that basically, hold on, 677, I mean, we know quite clearly that is associated with an under-responsive, enzymatic process in dealing with homocysteine. That's been proven in the literature. Mechanistically, it's real. But there are some other genes which are only associated. So you've got to be very careful how you look at genes in that regard. So just keep that in mind. That's another thing, Lukey, I need to basically sit down and do a video on some of the websites that are basically, and so people can know which to upload. There's the Genetic Genie one and a couple of others that basically are free, where people can upload their data. I have to do a video sometime this week. I'll try and remember and put up, and then people can just upload their file and it will actually spit out methylation, detoxification pathway. So you know where you may have susceptibility. And at least then you can go, okay, I need to keep this in mind, or, so yeah. Harry, is it normal that every time I add salt to the meat, it makes me want to eat more? When I do not add salt, I fill up sooner than if I do. Could salt have a similar effect to sort of, it can. Excess salt can actually sometimes drive sometimes if you're getting enough, you've got to listen to your body. I sort of, if I feel, something's too salty or, I sort of vary my salt intake. I'm not like constantly consuming. Sometimes I'll feel like more salt. Sometimes I'll feel like less salt. And I usually, because meat does have salt in it, animal products, and and if I don't really salt much, if I'm eating a lot of like cheeses and stuff like that, because they tend to have a lot of salt in them as well. So I usually listen to my body, and my intake varies. And so, yes, it can have that effect on you, especially if you combine it with dairy as well. Dairy seems to, that's why before I eat, I always cut 100 grams, and they say that's all you're having, and you're going to have a glass of milk later on, and that's it. And so I control my urge to have more, in a sense. But yeah, unless I have brie, and then God, I ignore everything, But that's pretty much just that's like a sugar bomb, for me. So, but yeah, it has been shown to have this increase in appetite, that salt can have this effect. It's a different pathway, but it can have this effect, and some people more than others. Again, it's very unclear. There's a lot of speculative thinking around it, but yeah. But generally, some people retain salt better than others. Once you actually upregulate your antidiuretic hormones, like I've done by consuming less water, what happens is you actually don't need as much salt. I've noticed that my salt levels have gone down, my intake, compared to the past. Again, because my antidiuretic hormones have been upregulated for consuming less water. I only have some Evian water, which is probiotic for my coffee, basically, 2 coffees a day. So 2 glasses of water, that's about it. And I probably have half a glass of water, probably 2.5 to be more precise. Half a glass just for my, taurine and all that. I'll mix it up quickly and just drink it, so it's about that amount. It's a very quite thick white thing when I'm drinking it, but it doesn't bother me. Some people may need to dilute it more because they find it uncomfortable, so it can vary. Anyway, glad I live in Ohio. Whiskey on the rocks is the current situation. Okay, bit of competition there between states. G'day, Mark. If you're not born in, okay, so more of this. Is that what you Americans do? Argue about which state you're in? We're the best state. Actually, some Australians do the same thing. See, they can't do that in New Zealand because it's a single state. It's not a. Actually, they still have the right to actually join the federation. We don't want them. Nobody's told them that yet. Oh, Richard's still here. Oh, God. Now he knows. So they're in the Australian Constitution because they had the opportunity, but they opted out. So, yeah, I know. Parochialism is alive and thriving in all parts of the world. I suspect because Brazil is also broken up in different regions and states. You guys are as parochial as well?
Yes, lots of regionalism, lots of rivalry. It's actually quite fun, to be honest.
Exactly. There you go. Everybody making claims. Can you back that up with a study, Daniel, or not? I suspect not. I want the study now. A link. I have a headache whenever I eat fat in the broth. Okay, my family uses as boiled pork, chicken. Is it a serious problem? Not really. No. Look, there may be, sometimes. Okay, I'll wind back. Majority of headaches are due to, and this is real. 90% plus of headaches are usually due to issues with gallbladder and liver. I'm not kidding it. That's what they usually are, the majority. Then the rest are for a whole lot of other reasons, dehydration or many other things. Yeah. So I would say that sometimes, because you're getting glycine in there, more than you would get from, your standard meat. When it comes to cysteine, that's not really much difference. So that's not going to be an issue there. That's what goes right down to taurine, in a sense, methionine, cysteine for taurine production. But glycine that you'll get more in the broth, because it does have to do with, the gallbladder and, bile production. And it seems to create a different viscousness. So the viscosity of the actual bile is going to be different compared to taurine. And so that may not, how can I put it? It'll change the flow of it. And that may put a bit extra pressure in the gallbladder, especially if you've got underlying sludge that you haven't got rid of, resolved. And that additional pressure can cause headaches. So that's what may be happening to you, and you've come from a Southeast Asian background, so you would have been on a much higher carb diet in the past, which means that you would have had a more sluggish gallbladder, and you may have sludge, because I used to have sludge and get a lot of headaches in the past. Now I don't, but I used to get a lot of bouts of really strange bowel movements and stuff like that because of that issue. And I had to go away from bone broths and stuff like that completely for similar reasons, that it was, not helping me on that front. And I stuck to just taurine and slowly but surely emulsifying and clearing out my bile ducts and stuff like that and reducing the sludge and the problem sort of improved. So I would say stay away from broths. I do them now, but I didn't do them back then. So I would stick to, not everybody gets sludges, gets stones. You emulsify them slowly and they clear out, and then you don't have the problem. So yeah, some people are lucky. My father had a big stone. It came through, ripped through his pancreas as well. And then he was, had an inflammation, a bit of pain. Then he was fine. Where me, I was getting these little pebble type things and then a whole lot of bloody sludge, and had months and months of this on, off gut problems due to the sludge coming in, out slowly at different paces. So, and I was getting headaches as well from this. And what you can do is you can actually just put your hand under. It could also be due to the pancreas being affected, because the bile ducts go through the pancreas. So what you do is you put under your rib cage, you put your hands there and you rub. You lie down and you rub until you loosen that sort of stuff up, the tension there. And by doing that, you'll get rid of the headache when you get it. So just keep that in mind. And don't go really hard in the, we're talking about mild rubbing to loosen things up, not basically trying to injure yourself by shoving your hand like with force and pressure. And, you're not trying to do things. You're trying to release tension. I'll put down. Is that a bit better? Okay. They'll have to do. Anyway, God, nobody likes, I'm not sure about this. Do you want me to put cameras and lighting, special lighting? And God. Like Bart does. I mean, mine's really plain in comparison. Bart's is like, elaborate and, it's like, bloody hell, So he's really all over the place in that regard. Anyway. Speaking of eggs, what's the big difference between free range and organic? Well, organic means that it actually says that anything that the actual animal has eaten does not have any pesticides on it. That's all it means. So it doesn't matter what it is. So it's just basically pesticide free. Now, can they guarantee pesticide free? Not really, hard logic. But that's what they claim, that all the sources of food and the environment which these with on their farm, but you could have the neighboring farm, your neighbor, and a bit of wind and bring some pesticide across into the farm. But on their farm, they don't spray. And the foods that they provide are, unsprayed, basically. So that's what they mean. Now, free range is one of the most dodgiest sort of labels that you can find in animal foods. It can vary from state to state, country to country, any place, and it can mean all sorts of things. It can mean that the animals are in the barn and they've just got some doors open, either all day long or only, let's say, 1 hour, half an hour a day, so they can pop out for half an hour and come back in to the barn. So pretty much it means they're not caged, but they're in a barn, and But in some other cases, it can mean that they're outdoor. That they're outdoors. The whole barn, the bottom of the barn is lifted. They can move in and out. But usually, animals. I'll tell you something about animals. You put a trough in front of them with a lot of food, and it's basically like putting in front of a little child a whole lot of lollies. They're not going to move from there at all. It's the same thing. And it fattens both up very fast. So, free range is just nonsense. If you really want animals that actually get out and eat their ancestral food, because they are the descendants of dinosaurs, and they eat bugs and stuff like that in the dirt, then they are eating their species appropriate diet. But most stuff out there is just grain fed. It's just a reality. Unless you're paying premium dollar, most of it is. It's just a reality. So what does that mean in terms of the actual animal itself? The animal itself, its meat is going to slightly have a bit more deuterium than normal. It's like its protein fleshy part, but we don't oxidize that unless you've really got deranged mitochondrial function. So now the fat is not going to be, it's going to be like much higher than the 124 or the 120s. It's going to be closer to that, which you get with, olive oil and stuff like that, or avocado oil or stuff like that. Non-processed oils, non-processed plant oils are going to be in the 130 range, more or less. So it's only the processed ones that are, because of the hydrogenation that actually happens in the processing, they can be as high as 255 parts per million. So very high, way beyond the threshold that your body can handle. Even at 150, your body's struggling, you'll still get some deuterium getting in. And that's what refined sugar is usually at that mark and above. But with seed oils, it's, forget it. There is no way you can stop 255 parts per million. There's not enough enzymatic steps to basically deteriorate at that level. It's just way in excess. But getting off that subject, it's slightly higher. And the other thing is the fatty acid profile isn't, but it's not going to be like really severe difference. So it's not going to kill you, not going to basically be harmful to you. It just basically means maybe you're not going to get as good a profile. Just that, So just keep that in mind. Don't go crazy on the stuff. But I don't worry about eggs because the only difference is between the eggs, the pastured eggs and the free range eggs. There's probably going to be the slight omega. There's going to be less omega-3s and more omega-6s. That's pretty much it, and a few other micronutrients that may differ slightly, but it's not going to be like horrendously, to justify the price. I wish all animals were pastured, but unfortunately, and it was affordable. Actually, we were subsidizing that sort of food, not the grains. So hopefully that will change in the future. We'll see.
No, Harry, but Salad Boy told me that corn-fed eggs are going to kill me.
People say all sorts of things.
Jesus, I just wonder how he thinks people even survived, because like most of my grandfathers, they grew up eating tons of like conventional eggs.
Well, most people did.
Health. Yep.
Well, in the past, many people basically used to feed all the scrappings from the feudal period, which were all plant-based scrappings, to the chickens and stuff like that, and the pigs and all that. They are far more tolerant. They are omnivores. They are far more tolerant and can deal with that stuff. So it's less of a problem. And Daniel goes, pork poofer is the death of us all. Yeah, yes, according to Saladino and the rest of them. Yes. One of my favorite foods is pork, so I get my omega-3s primarily from fish. And I get my omega-6s primarily from pork, eggs, and chicken. And you need actually more. As I said, for your peripheral tissue, you need 11 times more omega-6s. So all this ratio, that's just bullshit. Ignore it completely. It's rubbish. I don't believe in ratios. I think that that's wrong. That's where I disagree with a lot of carnivores, and I'm willing to debate the issue if they want to anytime. So it's nonsense. The only thing, unless you've got inflammation in your body, you're not actually going to increase prostaglandins. It's a response to inflammation. So if you're omega-6s don't cause inflammation unless they come from seed oils and they're rancid and full of aldehydes and primary and secondary oxidative products. That's when they'll create. But anything coming from a food matrix, I've done all those videos on PUFA, animal-based PUFA. People can go and look at them. You can cook the damn thing for 2 hours and you only get trace elements. In order to get any significant amount of oxidative products, and even then it's lower than olive oil that everybody touts, you have to cook the damn pork for 32 hours. Who's going to cook? I mean, it's like, we're not talking about crispy here. We're talking about charred, completely and utter charred. So anyway.
It's funny because I still get a lot of raw dieters insisting on the stuff of like polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and oxidated cholesterol, oxidated buff. And I'm like, do you guys realize that they are at such low levels that it's not even...
What did Mike do to basically Sammy's got been timing him out a bit. What's all that about?
He's going on about vitamin A being toxic.
Okay. Oh, well, I was going to answer that. It's not. Unless you've got a bad liver. If you've got a bad liver, that's all bets are off. You can't store it. Then it can be a problem. Yeah, but I mean, that's ease up, Sammy. If he was swearing or saying something nasty, I mean, that's just an opinion. That's fine. I've got no problems with that. I don't agree with it, but I don't have a problem. I think that, if you take a look at animals that are very low in retinol, they end up being blind or actually not even forming their eyes properly. So very low levels, it's not toxic at all. Excess anything, it can be a problem. That's why usually I don't recommend 30,000 IUs of vitamin D unless you're in a disease state. If you're sick, taking high doses because your receptor sites, are coated with vitamin D receptors, for basically viruses, when you've got it exposed to an illness. But that immune system will be down regulated when you're not, so you don't need as much. 5 to 10,000 IUs is all you need, depending on which part of the year. And in summer, if you've got good sun, get it from the sun. It's free, and it will be uptaken. The body can actually, in a day, anywhere between 10,000 and 20,000 IUs, but the influx is much slower. It can produce that and then produce less the next day, but the influx is much lower. These very high levels that people say on a constant basis, I disagree completely. I think that's not it's just not indicated. Our ancestors will never got those levels. Simple as that. It's just not the reality. And certain compounds, can't be stored properly at certain excess levels. Retinol can be stored quite substantially in the liver very easily, so it's not an issue. But anyway. Okay. Yep, Shelley's nuancing that a bit. Okay, that did it go gangbusters? The hairy pussy. It's probably a cat. It's probably a cat video. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm surprised actually YouTube allowed it to be. Yeah, it can be as well. It can be converted to oxalate as well. That's right. Gelatin, things like that can be as well. Yeah, we're supposed to get a bit of that through the connective tissue, like meat on the bone. But like excess amounts, I think a lot of people have this sort of weird thing. More is better. More retinol, more this, more that, more whatever. Getting a good level of retinol, that's fine. 5,000-6,000 within up to 10,000 IUs, not a problem. But once you start getting into these really high retinol levels, forget it. I'm not interested. That's just too excessive, sort of things. I remember that old geezer, multiple years, getting nearly 7,000 IUs of retinol every day from eggs, eating 25 eggs on average. So, forget it. It's not toxic. That guy outlived his parents and everything. It's nonsense. But, once you go beyond that 10,000 sort of mark, I usually say to people with vitamin D and retinol, just stay below that. You're getting enough, because you don't know what the state of you haven't been ancestral all your life. So you don't know if your liver's healthy, really healthy, it can store massive amounts of retinol. But if it's not healthy, it's got fibrosis and stuff like that, it can't. And there you have to basically heal the liver, milk thistle, taurine, choline, and all these sort of things, fix the liver first, and then you've got better storage capacity, So all these things are, better iron metabolism, taurine plays a big role in iron metabolism. So that's why people get into all sorts of trouble with excess. When you've got enough taurine in the system, what it does is any excess, it gets rid of it, excretes it. Manganese, bile working properly, your gallbladder, 90% gets excreted, a lot of other minerals through either bile or kidneys, and it's all regulated by taurine. That's why vegans and people on a plant-based diet tend to have all these problems and hold on to minerals and hold on to too much of heavy metals. They can't excrete them because they don't have proper bile function or kidney function because of their inappropriate diet. That's the thing.
So, Harry,
And histamine's not a problem unless you're not taking taurine. I've done a video on that covering that, all about it. The nutrient important for regulating inflammasome in the gut to prevent histamines and spermidine bacterial overgrowth as well. So both those are fixed by getting sufficient meat in your diet. Anyway, you were going to say.
Oh yes. So I don't know if you have seen that, but that vegan bazooka guy.
Yeah. But you know
You,
what? He's got more balls than a few other people, even though he's off the reservation. You know, some of the stuff that he talks is completely and utter. You
no,
go,
I just thought
bloody hell.
it was
Just
so funny that he was going on about no, but I'm pretty sure that I have a lower lead level than any person on a carnivore diet. Do you realize that you need sulfur amino acids to detox heavy metals?
exactly.
That selenium detoxes heavy metals. Where do you get those
Exactly.
things? Meat.
Animal foods.
It's like
Yeah, I know.
it's like
Cognitive
utter no.
dissonance.
Yes, completely out of his depth.
Yeah.
Oh
One of
my
the key
god!
things of glutathione is basically selenium. And for your thyroid as well. Selenium and
Exactly.
iodine. You know? So the two key ones are those. Zinc and other things do play a role in there, but the key two are selenium and iodine. And if you eat enough eggs and stuff, eggs are a great source for both of them. Usually covers you completely, you know. So yeah, look, it's weird out there. It's weird. Anyway, it's just the way it is. Yeah, as I said, linoleic acid is not a problem if it's coming from animals sources. It's in the food matrix, not a problem. And all it will do is basically get incorporated into your cell membranes, and a lot of it will be converted, because if you're not eating plants, that means you're not trying to force ALA and LA into being converted, because one needs to be converted. The LA needs to be converted to basically arachidonic acid, because that's the animal form that is needed, and that basically gets incorporated in the cell membranes and is used for a lot of these, anti-inflammatory and things like that. Bodybuilders actually supplement arachidonic acid specifically to improve their post-exercise recovery. So, exactly. So if you leave the pathway open, so you're not taking in plants which are competing to convert ALA to DHA EPA, then you leave that pathway completely open to arachidonic acid. So this is why people, when they go on a low carb diet or a carnivore diet, their arachidonic acid levels go up when they do tests. It's not accidental. And that's what you want, arachidonic acid, because arachidonic acid is basically the key omega-6 that you need for healing and repair. That's why it's the ancestral way. So don't worry about farmed eggs or whatever. God, I mean, I say to people, if you can't afford, these other ones, buy caged eggs. That's fine by me. I don't have a problem. Other people may, but I don't. As long as you basically you're not putting in any plants, then you leave that pathway open to convert all the LA to, even if it's more, to arachidonic acid. Perfect. Not a problem. So, yeah, people need to stop worrying about these sort of things. They worry too much about nonsensical things. Ratios, plants. That's where this whole thing about ratios comes from, the plant world. People from the vegetarian, vegan world, where they have these issues in the paleo world where they're eating too many plants. But once you step away from those sort of plant-centric diets, the issue goes away completely. I agree. Very much so. Basically, yeah. I love eggs. I usually have about 6 to 8 eggs a day. You know, many other carnivores do as well. So I don't do it like that old man. He was 25 eggs a day and over decades and decades and decades. So the case study back in 96, he was, and basically, well, he was in a retirement home, and the people there in the retirement home basically told the doctor, we serve him 25 eggs on average a day, and he just goes around munching on them all day. So, you know, it blows out the cholesterol, and he had normal cholesterol levels, no inflammation, none of these problems and all that. Outlived both his parents. His dad died at 40, his mum died at 76, no longevity genes, and he was 88 in really good health. And he just, I mean, that's a lot of eggs. It had to be bloody hard to eat so many eggs. But, you know, I mean, raw I could do it, you know, by swallowing just one after the other. But actually physically sitting there and munching away on 25 eggs a day, God almighty, that'd be hard. It'd be it'd be different. Plus all the other, you know, other foods. Yeah, that'd be really bloody hard.
So, Harry, here's an interesting thing. I was reading about Vince Gironda's some maximum definition protocol, which is basically, you know, those like 30 eggs a day.
Mm.
He at the time he believed that there may have been effects from the possible hormones in the eggs, but I don't really
Nah.
think that. Yeah, I don't really think that's possible. You know.
It's the same
Because
bullshit they talk about milk and hormones.
yeah,
The receptor sites in humans are completely different.
okay,
Completely different. So they can't even attach themselves to those receptor sites. They're not the same.
Mhm.
So, you know,
Yeah.
so it's pretty much a non-issue. It's like like viruses that don't have the ACE2 receptor
Yeah.
or can exploit human receptor sites. They can get into us from other animals, and then all they do is just cross to another animal that causes. They just completely neutral. They cause us no
Mhm.
issue whatsoever. You know, some of them can infect bacteria and control them, so they do. There are other roles that they can play, but that's when they become beneficial viruses. Yes, God, shock horror, beneficial viruses, yes. That don't exploit us, but exploit some of the pathogenic bacteria, which is a good thing, keeps them under control. So the world of microorganisms is very interesting and very complicated. So, you know, you got to realize that. And there are certain things that can actually hijack certain nutrients as well, certain bacteria, certain, you know, so that's another problem. Some of them can actually, you know, do the same thing and reduce your intake of taurine. So another, you know, a couple of strains that do that. Some can basically scavenge more of the B vitamins. Others produce more of the B vitamins. So there can be a lot of damn, you know, things that can be at play when it comes to the gut microbiome, and half the things we don't even more than half, I'd say, we don't even understand. So it's, yeah. But one thing that we do know is that taurine does regulate, so that's at least one start. And then putting in some, you know, doing kefirs and stuff like that, putting some, because humans have been doing fermented foods from day dot. You know, fermented foods, animal foods have been part of the human story from our scavenger days. That's why we've got a low pH, to basically, you know, the Inuit throwing fish under the ice snow to basically let it ferment. It's been part of the, you know, probiotics and stuff like that. It's been part of the human story for a very long time. You know, so there is some validity to it in terms of ancestral usages and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's all interesting. But still, God, our knowledge is so primitive, our understanding. This is why it amuses me how these people jump up and down and go, "Oh, yeah, I know everything. This is how it works." Well, you don't. I don't. None of us do. Most academics and all that are completely in the dark about most things. That's why even the allopathic physicians, what do they say? They tell you always that, when they can't work it out, they tell you it's an unknown cause. They always use that liner, you know. So idiopathic, as they call it, it's all idiopathic. Basically, you got no friggin' idea. Just be honest. That's what you mean. And that's the reality. We don't have Star Trek technology where you can see everything and know everything and how things are moving and interacting, and a supercomputer say, "Oh, it's this is doing this, and this, and this." You're trying to, from reading people's symptoms and talking to them and trial and error and doing things to see whether you can actually sort something out. I mean, really? Some people will sit there blatantly and claim as if they are. And you go, nah. And that's why I go back to my foundation stone. My foundation stone is the N15 data from archaeology that shows that we were super hyper carnivore for most of our existence. That's good enough for me. The rest is basically knowledge to understand how the body works in order to help people, in order to biohack things so we can live longer, healthier, that sort of stuff. But all this other noise is just basically childish arguments that most people like to have, especially ignorant people, unfortunately, and there's quite a few of them in this space. Yeah, I did try duck eggs once, but I can't say I'm a big fan of duck eggs. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I'll leave it at that. Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes people are just chasing windmills, a bit like John Quixote. Chasing after his windmills. Basically, some of us are. Yeah. You the penguin guy on Discord? Uh, maybe. You're an animal. It's good to have you here, mate. Exactly. Way better than many of the other stuff out there. I say to people, get as much human, animal, as much species appropriate animal nutrition you can into your body, and your kids, and that's going to be the best thing. It's kind of, yeah, it is pretty pointless, Yeah, I usually buy for $9, I buy like 30 eggs, like a big 30 egg pack. That's how I do it. So, I mean, that's $9 Australian pesetas. I can't call them Pacific ones because that's the Kiwis. They're out there on an island in the southwest Pacific. Yes, and with their proclivities of animal husbandry, but we won't go into that because it's there may be little kids around, so we've got to be careful what we say. As Richard says, a lot of pre-loved mutton is what they sell. Anyway, let's get back into it. It's about that makes one egg 30 cents a pop. 30 cents Australian a pop, basically. Yeah. Eggs used to be way cheaper in the past. It's just Yeah, nowadays. All these people going plant-based, they eat too many eggs. Stevia leaves low in. Yes, they are. Well, anything that comes from anything that's green because of the photosynthesis will have lower amounts. Generally, most of the on a certain growth phase, it probably does in that early growth phase, yes. But as the photosynthetic effect, so a young plant, yes, will have higher deuterium. That's true. Uptake from water, but as the photosynthetic effect happens over time, as the plant grows, it will lose. It's another reason why once the plant gets to its full growth, it struggles to get beyond a certain level. And at that phase, by that time, that's when the harvesting anyway. So you're getting at a time when it's already done most of the depletion.
Yeah, exactly.
So
most of those leaf-based products, they usually get mature leaves anyway, so wouldn't be that much of an issue. Even yerba mate is usually made from older leaves, so
yep.
That's the typical way they do things, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So it's less really of an issue. I wouldn't worry about it, Llama. Nothing to. Yeah, it can seem confusing, but this is the problem with studies. They're not. They do this study, they do that study, they claim this and claim that, but at least this one did talk about different growth phases, and differentiated between a growth phase and a mature plant. A mature plant will have less, because what it does is it actually takes that from the water molecules that it's sucked up from the ground, which have higher deuterium, 2H, and what it will do is it will take out, through the photosynthetic effect, it'll take out those, and it will actually concentrate them in the fruit. And that's when you get a mature plant, then it starts growing fruit, and that fruit is where it's actually concentrating it to grow those fruit, in that regard. So it's a really good mechanism. Sort of, it's like our Krebs cycle doing water production, and deteriorating, and it's something similar that is basically happening through but a sort of photosynthetic effect, and then driving growth in another part of the plant, which is the fruit, whatever that is, the nut, the fruit, or whatever it is that actually the seed, as it's called, not the nut, the seed. For nuts, for one reason or another, because they tend to have higher fat content, the protein and the sugar content, which is very little, has an excessive amount, really high deuterium, but the rest of the nut itself, the fat part, is much lower in deuterium. So on average, it actually ends up being lower in deuterium. Even we're talking about some nuts can be as low as 105, 106 parts per million, even lower than animal fats. Yeah, but they do have a lot of anti-nutrients associated with them, which is another problem in itself. So, but it can vary between nuts. But we have to be honest about that. That is the reality. But we would have been eating these seasonally, not all year round, in very small amounts anyway. So, if you eat too many of those, it's going to cause other problems with oxalates. And oxalates can have a damaging effect on the mitochondria as well, not only on the cells, mitochondria, and many other things. So we need to keep that in mind as well. So, yeah, one advantage here, but then a disadvantage related to other factors within that stuff. So, yeah, got to balance these things out. Plants do come with, they're like a double-edged sword. Sometimes they can give you a bit of good stuff, but sometimes they also can give you a lot of bad stuff. So that can be a problem. Just keep that in mind. But we need to be honest about that's what the research shows. So, but it used to be seasonal anyway, because that's when it was available. Just because we can store things nowadays, it doesn't mean we should be consuming them all year round, because we've got refrigeration and storage facilities, dry facilities where we can store nuts and stuff like that for months and months without going off or molding as they would in nature. They would mold and nobody would eat that because they'd get sick. Okay, he's still on that. Yes, Lava basically will jump on his little rant. Anyway, he does all my short videos, Llama. So he does all that sort of stuff. So he's trying to get me to commit to another one. So I've just been a bit caught up with a lot of other things, as you know, Dad, and many other things. Mira with her business related issues. Anyway, so people have been taking up my time. So things are easing up now, so I can get back to doing some YouTube videos at long last without being pestered by all my families and relatives and everyone else. Anyway, without getting into it. I always get banned. Oh, do you? You're an animal? Do you piss all over the people in the Discord, and then you wonder why Necro Kitty knocks you out? Is that what's happening?
No, I think I know what he's referring to. It's not that he's being banned from specific servers, it's that Discord thinks he is a persona non grata and his account ends up.
The whole company.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, you've been fisted by the whole company.
Yep.
Oh, well. Yes. God. Well, that's an award in itself. It's a bit like getting completely knocked off Twitter and being the president of the country. God, I mean, yeah. What were they thinking? Is sort of my opinion. Whether you agree or disagree with him, what were they thinking? I mean, he's the president of the country. I mean, please. I mean, you guys are complete and utter. Yes. G'day, Peter. Thiamines and spermidine in combination with taurine to gut. I would not put spermidine in there. Definitely not. Spermidine is contraindicated. We don't want bacterial overgrowth because that's what it will do. Actually, taurine suppresses spermidine and to prevent bacterial overgrowth like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and SIBO as it's called. And also it reduces histamine or mast cell activation in the gut. That's what taurine does, as via inflammasome. But it does a whole lot of other things. It regulates motility and secretion of things, and stomach acidity, and enzyme production, and you name it. Anyway, thiamine. I'm not really a big fan of thiamine. First of all, when there are two enzymatic pathways, and when you're actually consuming just an animal-based diet, you only use one of them. It's only when you're eating carbohydrates you use both, which basically means you only need half the RDI. And on a carnivore diet, you get more than enough. So yeah, don't waste your money. And if you eat a bit like tuna and little piggy, pork that is, you'll actually get more than you need. You'll probably get double or triple the amount you need. That beyond the RDI, if you eat enough of those meats, because they're very high in both of them. If you take a look, it's pretty much, yeah, pork and tuna and things like that. Pork's the top one, of the animal foods. So yeah, it's pretty much not required. I wouldn't supplement. So I mean, people have their opinions about that. I know Elliot does and many others, but I sort of disagree on the necessity for these high amounts. I don't see the therapeutic requirement, basically, especially when you've got all these rate limiting enzymes. It can only take so much. So explain to me why we need more. I think it just ends up expensive urine, personally, but that's my opinion. Oh, it depends. Prices can vary in different parts of the world for a whole lot of reasons. I'm not gonna claim I'm an expert on pricing for different animal foods. I know now with the food shortages and the energy shortages and all these other things, in some countries, it's more extreme, certain availability of foods. Like you go to Germany, Poland, a few other countries like that, the availability has actually dropped slightly because they used to get some of this stuff from Eastern Europe. It's not coming through. And then you've got other countries which have got a fine. Like Australia, we haven't seen much of a change because we produce 3 times the amount of food that we consume. So most of it gets a lot, the domestic production. There's enough people out there producing for the domestic production that don't export. And so nothing's really changed on that front. Unless all of a sudden half the population of Australia becomes carnivore, which is unlikely. Only then I may notice something. But at this stage, I'm still getting the same stuff. Everything else has gone up. Everything that's imported has gone up in Australia. And anything that basically is like cheese, that has some domestic production is similar priced. Some of the foreign cheeses have gone up, but not a lot. I mean, some of it has even gone down, and I was just shocked. I mean, I'm going, like some Dutch cheeses were on special recently, and I'm going, that's weird. So it's maybe it's an old supply potentially. I don't know, but the domestic meats, the domestic eggs and all that are still available quite cheap. It's all the packaged stuff that's actually gone up in price. Anything that's processed and packaged and all that is actually gone up in price. So if you're eating that sort of kibble and that sort of stuff, that's actually gone up in price. I've noticed around. Toiletry has gone slightly up. We get some domestic produced goat milk based like soaps and stuff like that. That's remained the same price, which is good. So anything produced in Australia seems to be less affected. Anything produced outside Australia or has to travel some distance from other states, that may have gone up a bit, depending. Luckily, in Tasmania, we do produce most of the stuff that we consume, which is good. And plus, I go to the farmers market and they haven't changed their prices at all. They're all the same. So, yeah, I don't see we haven't really felt the problem, in this part of the world. But in other parts of the world, yeah, it's really, it can be. Is it not really? It's not really healthy to have a bunch of excessive muscle mass, is it? Well, most people can't get into that excessive bodybuilding level unless they take roids, the juice, so to speak, and many other things. You just can't. You look at the Maasai, you look at the, all these other populations. They've got really good muscularity. I've shown a couple of times and all that, but they're not excessive. They are Europeans tend to be more. That's because of their Neanderthal genes. That's the only reason. That's why people can't compete with the Europeans. that have got Neanderthal, some Neanderthal genes, because they tend to have lower myostatin as well due to those genes, and they tend to also have the ability to build bigger muscles. It's just, and so somebody who's European will have bigger. I mean, like I don't even have to try. I just eat meat and I become quite muscular without even trying. I don't do, guys, I don't do any physical exercise like bodybuilding or anything like that, so not at all. And I'm 56, and it's not too bad with that actually. And I used to do like 1 day a week, and I haven't even been doing that now for months. Just sheer laziness. But it really comes to, unless you're taking the juice, you're not going to get those massive things. Now you can basically amplify that with good exercise and all that. You can amplify, but that, getting up to the 4 grams or 5 grams, and then using taurine, using leucine as supplementation, using some of these things. And there are some peptides out there, all that are not harmful. They can actually magnify, reduce myostatin and stuff like that. And then you can use that effect to sort of magnify the muscle protein synthesis without really starting to use your insulin and all these other things and causing a lot of derangements and problems. That's why they're dropping dead all over the place. And you can actually build, you won't build like a world-class level of muscularity, but you can still build a quite muscular body, a bit like Jonathan. He keeps it pretty clean. I was hoping that he'd come on today, but maybe he's going to come on the evening one, because I did send him some links. So we'll see. Maybe something came up in his life. I don't know. So if he does turn up, he does turn up. If he doesn't, there's always next fortnight. So he can let me know. You can contact me.
Speaking of the other live stream here, I think I'll get going because I'm starting to get sleepy.
That's okay, because it's late where you are. I understand.
Yeah,
That's fine.
past midnight. But
Exactly.
it's been nice being here, and yeah, I just wish you well, and thanks everyone for being here for your questions.
Yeah.
I'll see you all next time.
Yeah. Thanks for being here, Luke. I appreciate it. Take care, and see you next time.
Yep. See you next time. Bye-bye.
See you, mate. Well, back to this average person, guy, whatever, attack helicopter. Anyway, why do some people have which is next to their name? Because they're moderators. That's why. And they've been supporters of this channel for a very, very long time. And that's why they have against their names. So, people are loyal, supportive, stuff like that. Yes. So today there's quite a few of them that have turned up. Sometimes I get live streams where there's only one person. Just people do have their lives. So depends. Yes, very much so. Oh, look, a lot of people have been doing that, which is unfortunate, and creating long-term health problems for themselves. And a lot of bodybuilders just dropping dead from doing a lot of strange things, putting a lot of strange things in their bodies. We're carnivore elders. Yeah, exactly. I'll go with that one. It's a nice one. Yeah, they are cheap. Yes. It can be a bit of a price hike in that regard. Versus, no wonder you got banned from Discord, and then you wonder why. Mischievous. Pissing on everyone. But that's your name, if I can understand. You're a cat or a dog? Uh, what do you identify as? Hey, Harry, doctor described 2 states of plaque. Grease coated inside the arteries with statins can fix, and others concrete. What? Does this line up with stable and unstable plaque description? Probably not the terminologies that I would use in that regard, at all. I mean, statins in the first year can stabilize unstable angina. So if you take them with coenzyme Q10 or ubiquinol in the reduced form, if you're, over 38 at least, because you need the conversion to the reduced form is much harder as we get older. We need to get it in the ubiquinol form, which is more the animal form, but it's much harder, so that can sort of mitigate some of the problematic issues with statins. On the other hand, they are a mitochondrial poison, so we don't want to be doing them for too long. 6 months to stabilize angina. You will increase your CAC score, your calcium coronary artery score will go up in that period. But obviously you have people that don't have a species appropriate living for many years may have a need. At the same time, species appropriate diet will lower inflammation, increase calcification as well into that sort of stuff and stabilize it as well. So it can work both ways. Statins seem to do it a bit faster, but they do have side effects. So that's the other side of the coin. When it comes to other people's bodies, I'm never tell them what to do. You need to make your own choices as a person. All I can tell you is what the science indicates, that basically statins will increase calcification. Some people talk about an anti-inflammatory effect, but it's very little. It's basically next to useless. If you're putting in contraindicating things and inflaming yourself, it's not going to do much. It's really this stabilizing of angina where you get a reduction, so a slight reduction in secondary heart issues or heart attacks. So most people that are basically on a kibble diet, still inflaming themselves, doing the inappropriate things, they take statins, they calcify and stabilize their unstable angina, but they're still building more unstable angina continuously. So it reduces it slightly and reduces the effects, but these people, because the unstable angina will be increasing quicker than the calcifying stabilization of statins, that are basically in the long run, it's not something which will be very successful. People will still end up getting heart attack incidents and problems. You've got to stop basically inflaming your arteries. Simple as that. And that means moving to a species appropriate diet that takes away all the inflammation. And so whether you take statins to more rapidly, as a short-term measure, to more rapidly calcify and stabilize unstable angina, if you've got severe, if you don't have severe unstable angina, then you don't really have to take that approach, because it does have a lot of other side effects. So it's a really hard one to basically say to people, this way or that way or whatever, and the grease coating inside, that's basically streaks. That is basically because of the sheer pressure in the arteries. You can actually get that plaquing can actually cause some streaks under pressure. But when it gets calcified and gets stabilized, then you don't get that. So that's, but grease coating is not the appropriate, I would call it. Basically, these are streaks of unstable angina being, having some of those because you basically get a whole lot of LP(a) that tries to stitch it all together to try and stabilize it with some collagen fibers and all that. So, and initially it starts putting in calcium to sort of stabilize it. And that happens in a non-inflammatory state. Normally, the reason why it doesn't work that fast, the natural process of healing, is because we never inflamed our bodies to that level by consuming toxic seed oils and stuff like that, that create high levels of oxidation in the arteries to do far more severe damage. So the damage to the arterial walls were minor, and so you'd get LP(a) being upregulated, go in there, it stitch it all up, and that's where all that sort of the so-called LDL it's the LP(a) with a modified version of LDL with this long tail that stitches it all up with a bit of and that helps bring in some of the fibrous sort of stuff, the fibrinogen and all this. The clotting factors will clot it up and bring in fiber and sort of stabilize that area, and slowly calcification will come in. But usually the injuries in our lives used to be very minor, and that wasn't a problem. Now it's major, and that's why sometimes using something which is not indicated, like statins, as a short-term measure to rapidly calcify, which it does, can actually cause quicker stabilization. So if somebody comes back to me and says, I've really got a lot of unstable angina, I'll say, well, take coenzyme Q10 or ubiquinol and take it for 6 months to basically stabilize, and accept the side effects to stabilize the angina, and then get off it and stay on a non-inflammatory diet so the healing can happen behind, and then the body will clear away the calcium and clear away all that the sort of the fibrotic tissue and all the lipids in there. They'll slowly, as the healing happens behind the endothelium, it's like basically, you scratch yourself and then it sort of heals, and you get this rough stuff that then it comes off, it peels off. Same thing, the body will just clean it all up inside, and then you'll basically have arteries, and then glycocalyx will emerge, and basically it'll be basically back to normal, without the damage. So you can reverse it over time, like I've done. I've reversed a lot of that sort of stuff. It took me quite a few years, and also got rid of all fibrosis out of my lungs, plus a whole lot of other organs. So it's, that's why I've been discharged. I'm the first person in Tasmania to be discharged by the Royal Hobart Hospital cardiology section. And the thing that shocked me the most, Michael, they didn't ask me how. The doctor told me what, and then asked me, and I said, look, I've got rid of all the processed stuff, the oils and stuff like that, and eating, real foods without, getting too controversial. But yeah, oh, okay, fine. It worked for you. It must be genetics. And I'm going, whatever. Yeah, it's just so much cognitive dissonance. I didn't want another argument. I had a previous argument with a previous cardiologist. We nearly end up in a fist fight. So I wasn't interested, because people just, anyway, I'll leave it at that. Is it healthy or unhealthy? Depends how you do it. Yep. That's fighting words. Exactly. Yeah, I have to say that's what I like about it as well, Daniel. You don't have to track anything, basically. Yes. I have to have one on Bart's channel. I used to have one, and I've been off and on past few months. Uh, Actually, I think Bart reset a lot of his stuff in that period when he was transitioning, and then just put back some people. I think that's what happened when his channel went down or whatever. Yes. Those interesting days. Yeah, the waist to height ratio is a better measure than the BMI and all these other things, or even weight, because you can actually have more muscle and you can be heavier. So yeah, the BMI is, if you're a standard person without, so yeah, pretty much, Bruce, that's what happens. Yes, a lot of that sort of stuff, promoting. uh, yes, he's an animal. He's an animal. Yes. Yeah. You're giving him some good tips, or he needs to cage himself. Oh, well, Kibble does that. Oh, yeah, look, they do that, and some take, some have at least had or were honest enough to admit, like Hench Herbivore and a few others did admit that they were taking the juice, in that regard. And nowadays, a lot of these people they'll take leucine, taurine, essential amino acids. They'll take a lot of the powders, heaps and heaps of them, to basically get the same, So, I mean, the reality is, if you go back a decade, they wouldn't have been able to do it. They can do it now because there's a lot of stuff that they can supplement with. It's not the best quality. It still has, like if you're taking from soy type, you know, now a lot of them are going, oh, we're not going to use soy isolate. We'll use pea isolate and other things because, they're in terms of less sort of the estrogenic effects of the soy stuff. So a lot of these bodybuilders now are shifting to pea protein and a few other things. There's a couple of other things that the plant-based people are doing, in that regard, or they're going to pure pharmaceutical grade, which doesn't have any of the anti-nutrients coming in from the plants of these, less refined, you could say, sources of aminos. So they get using these other options, and that's And so for me, when I see that, I'm going, well, that's disingenuous, because it's not based on a plant-based diet. It's based on a plant-based diet with a truckload of supplements to basically get that result. Yeah, and it's usually the virtual signal. It's pretty much that. And they're younger. They're basically more robust. They've got less damage. People like me, 56 and older, I mean, yeah, we tried to do that. It would fall apart. You don't see. It's all these young people, you know. If you look at some of these older vegans that have, God, you look at them and they're at my age, like in their mid-50s and all that, and they look like they're 70 or 80 or older. They really look bad, you know. So, and even those people are basically doing a whole lot of supplements, a truckload of supplements, and do a couple of other things. And even some of them succumb to cheating. Some of them get caught out. Some of them admit it. Some of them don't. But, that's the reality. What happens. I mean, some of them actually describe it as a brain fogged carnage and trying to eat, eggs and stuff like that, where they have they're so, where they don't even realize they're doing it. It's just the body subconsciously is driving them to eat that stuff. So, well, that's what they claim, um, that they couldn't control themselves or whatever. So, yeah, well, maybe it is, their body's basically saying, well, I need this stuff to survive. So, It's probably overriding any of their, control mechanisms from, their frontal lobe is brain fogged as it is. So, obviously the subconscious probably does take over to some extent, saying, we need this stuff or we're going to die. So in that regard, yes. Yeah, they can. Well, they've got greater mitochondrial density. They've got a lot of advantages. So, yeah, they've got. That's why they can lose weight much faster. They can do a lot of things, But as the years creep on and the damage accelerates, and then it becomes harder and harder. And if you don't clean up at that stage, things are going to get. Then you're going to be on meds and maybe in a wheelchair or who knows what. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, exactly. That's what they do. It's just sort of a lot of that sort of stuff. I mean, we know Mick the vegan does that, and many others do a lot of that sort of stuff. Where we carnivores just say, "This is us." Yes, I am getting old. I'm 56. What do you expect? But it don't look too bad for 56. I wouldn't want to date one of those empty heads. Okay. I just thought about something inappropriate, but anyway, I'll get out of the gutter. Yes. Anyway, move on before I say something I'll get in danger or trouble. Still, it's like a CICO mindset, right? Yeah. Yes, the old calories in, calories out. That's another reason why they don't like the Randall cycle, because it basically goes against that narrative as well. So yeah, it's the reason the CIC, the plant-centric model that was being pushed by Ansel Keys and many others and his minions of, brainwashed supporters, pretty much. Yeah, that's one reason why we went down that pathway. I forgot about it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't, I'll get out, in summer, and because I'm always out in the sun, I'm always basically I get a bit red and a bit pinky and stuff like that. I don't care, I'm not burning, but I used to in the old days, but I'm not there. This is me. And if you take a look at most ancestral people, they've got more color. Got more blood flowing in their bodies and stuff like that. Their tissue. They're not this white shadow where they have to put all these things on, powders and stuff like that, to give themselves a bit of color and definition. Probably other things, but I'm not up to date on those things. No certified nutritionist for you, not even if she's cute yet. Anyway, I'll move on before I make a comment about that as well. I have a non-discriminatory policy. Anyway, it says a lot about me. God. Okay, we know you love those pre-loved ones. Calm down, no sheep. Not a CIC thing at all. It's protein ratios. It's nice that your dad has a critical thinking doctor to look after him. Yeah, look, John's pretty good. in that regard. Sort of, yeah. I think, like, even my doctor basically said, he asked me, and I go, nah. And he goes, yeah, well, I'm not going to force you, am I? I've got no chance in hell. Yeah, sort of. It's hard if you're in and you've got the government, the AMA, the Australian Medical Association, and all these organisations breathing down your throat, telling you will comply with these sort of jab rules and stuff like that. And, a lot of them don't, they'll, even the ones that are critical, like he's, are just sort of not willing. And at the end of the day, if Dad said no, it wouldn't have happened, So he was required to recommend it because that's what the government has been telling them, that he needs to do it and needs to tick off on it, that he's actually, he had to go online. This is what Dad said. He had to go online and even make a phone call to basically whether, because Dad said, well, I got COVID after the third. Do I need, and he had to call, and they actually instructed him, you must comply with the fourth for these older people. So he was told over the phone, he was saying, well, yeah, you probably don't, and then he called and they instructed him. Now, obviously, Dad could have declined at that point, and you can't force someone in that regard, because it's, it may be mandated, but it's still voluntary whether you comply or not in that regard. And Dad doesn't have any employment issues to worry about, so he's retired, so it's a non-issue. So it was his choice at the end, Dad's choice. But the doctor was actually caught in a bind between being pressured by one end and, yeah. But had Dad said no, he would have got the doctor off the hook. So because he would have basically said, well, the patient has actually declined, put it in the form and all that, and it would have been that. Now, then possibly the government may have sent Dad a whole lot of forms, asking him why isn't he doing it and stuff like that, and harassing him like they do. But at the end of the day, I would just send it back and tell them to go themselves, F themselves, would be my reply at that point. And then they'll give up. But this is what they do, unfortunately. We've got governments that are basically interfering with doctors' decisions and management of their patients, and doctors are being pressured. And patients, they don't want to. I don't know. It's a lot of things that go through their mind. Patients sometimes don't want to upset their doctor. The doctors that are more willing to go along with this without any. I mean, most other doctors won't even call. Do I need to do this? He did at least that, and he was told, that he had to. How ridiculous is that? But at the end of the day, Dad could have declined. And as he said, your dad could have declined. But, if he doesn't, and I've been told, and I have to recommend it, I'm in a bind with my license. That's his livelihood. He's got a family. He's got a young family to support. He's a younger doctor, sort of middle-aged, late 30s, I think, around, or early late 30s, or around there. But he's in a difficult spot. At the end of the day, I said to Dad, I told him not to do, and he said I should have listened to you. I said you could have declined. That you could. So anyway, the damage has been done. So now we're just rectifying it. Hopefully, that's a lesson to my dad primarily, because if you decline, then the doctor's off the hook, if you know what I mean. So, but you have to decline. The doctor will recommend it to you, but you have to decline, because they have to do it under the the legislation. They're required by government. Otherwise they could lose their license for not complying with directives from the health department. So you need to keep that in mind. But at the end of the day, you have a choice as a person to decline. And that's what my father should have done and didn't do. So the responsibility also goes with him as well. I put primary responsibility on Dad, not the doctor. I criticize the government for irresponsibility in pushing experimental stuff, and when there are other options, less problematic. So that's where I criticize governments and all that. But I don't go around pointing the finger and being critical and nasty towards doctors. A lot of doctors are just complying with the rules. People can decline. You don't have to agree with everything your doctor says, or basically tells you need to do. Barstool? What are we talking about? I've probably lost that part of the conversation. So I'll move on. Yes, please hit the like button. Yes, that's good. That's good. We had 50 earlier. It did drop off. Anyway, maybe someone will come back or view it later. At my age, you don't discriminate. I'll leave it at that without saying too much. G'day, Tracy. Homemade apple cider vinegar versus homemade Albury vinegar, both with a mother and homemade. Any help with digestion? If I was going for any one of those, I think there's far more research, but it also is associational. We need to be honest about this with apple cider vinegar. Also, apple cider vinegar, apples tend to be more tart in some regards. So they tend to have a certain, well, if they come from a tart version, because that's what they usually use, they use the tarted ones for the vinegar primarily, they will tend to have a slightly lower pH. So for digestion, probably a better thing in terms of, stomach vinegar dilution or intermixing. So that sort of thing that I'm thinking about. But there's a lot of that. Look, they can have a bit of. It depends, Depends basically what's your stomach acidity like, Tracy. If it hasn't been good for a long time, it can probably help a bit. As with taurine and eating more, meats will slowly improve that over time. So sort of the way of actually putting it. But do you need it? If you really need to ramp up acidity, you can go for the HDCl type supplements. So you love the old mutton. Is that what you're telling me? Okay. Good point, Shelley. Very good point for these younger lads. Okay. And okay, we're talking about a whole lot of different women. Fair enough. Okay. Yes, yes, all those things are, I think, important indeed. I need your phone. She's taken. Yes, 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 strict time, yes. Thank you as well. It's good to supplement with carnosine or would compete with taurine. Oh, look, some people do, but if you're eating enough meat, you probably don't need it. Let's put it that way, Jenny. Don't basically look, the uptake of aminos in that regard is taurine dependent. So carnosine isn't going to really, if you take too many, see, when you're taking in like powders and stuff like that, it's not like in the matrix of meat or animal food. You get a quicker transit time coming through the body. As a consequence, the bioutilization is lower. I'll give you an example. Plants have a forget about how much protein they have. Some of them have good levels of protein compared to others, but their utilization into the amino pool is about 17%. It's the same as powders. All the powders that people get, supplements, 17%. It's proven. There's research, unless you're using whey, and whey is a bit different because it's basically a powdered version of an actual animal food that has combinations that actually has high utilization. The highest utilization is actually eggs at 49%. All meats, seafood meats, ruminant meats, all the different meat types, poultry and whatever else, all the different types, and little piggy as well, all that sort of stuff. I covered any other animals? Anyway, pretty much is about 32% utilization. So a lot of these sort of stuff have got lower, poorer utilization. So now, because the way they influx into the gut, they tend to be excreted. You lose more of them. You absorb less. So it's in that regard. And taurine isn't an actual amino acid like the others. It's a sulfonic acid. It's just being called a sulfur amino acid, a bit like methionine, cysteine. It's because of the convention, the naming convention, in a sense. But in reality, it's a sulfonic acid. So it's slightly different. So it doesn't make up the amino pool in the same way, and it goes through transporters in the gut. So a bit different in that regard. Now, what it does help is in protein uptake. So from the gut to move protein into the amino pool, you actually need taurine. Taurine actually increases the transport. It's the reason why bodybuilders use, so they can actually take a lot of powders in, and then they use taurine to take in more. So forget about competition. You're actually using taurine as like an additional dump truck to take in more of the powder into the body. So it does increase the uptake into the amino pool. That doesn't necessarily mean that it will actually increase the utilization. But you may end up with more aminos to be able to be used for other functions. I mean, not all aminos are used for protein synthesis or building muscle mass or bones and stuff like that, because bones are mineralized collagen. Not all of them use. A lot of the aminos are used basically for other functions. So you may only utilize this amount, but you'll utilize the remaining for other things like building enzymes that do, we have a plethora of billions of enzymes throughout the body doing all sorts of functions, from, within the cells, within the mitochondria, within the different fluid compartments of the body. Pretty much everywhere there are enzymes doing pulling things apart or building things up. That's what their job is. This catalytic sort of enzymatic processes, functions. So, and also a whole lot of protein peptides, but also, which basically a string of aminos that are encoded to do certain functions. You have some of these which are important in transporting certain minerals around, or bringing in minerals from the gut, so to speak. So there's a whole lot of myriad of things. So that extra amino acids pool will be used for other things. But obviously, animal foods that have got a high utilization can actually enhance, for the same quantity, they can enhance the level of muscle protein synthesis. That's the difference, basically, because you've got more being utilized for protein synthesis rather than a whole lot of second, or you wouldn't call them secondary functions, but other non-protein synthesis functions, to be more precise. Enzymes, blah, what I was saying. So, but do you need to supplement carnosine? If you're eating enough meat, not really. If you're not, for whatever reason, or you may have a tick allergy where you can't actually eat ruminants, red meat, because of a tick allergy and all that. Fine. If you need to eat like fish and other sources and maybe supplement some of these aminos, fine. That's not a problem. Until you go through a process of desensitization. So it really depends, Jenny, on a whole lot of factors, where you're at any point in that regard, whether something's an indicated good idea or not. So, things are neither bad or good if they're indicated for specific reasons at a specific points in time or whatever. Wonderful food, wonderful stuff. I just got back online. Okay, so so you've been having issues, connection issues. Yes, they can happen in that regard. Anyway, any protocol for cleaning our liver? Yes, Lolly. So gallbladder sludge and all that. It's called taurine. It's it does a lot of things in the body. You must be new to the channel, so nice to have you here. But taurine basically does improve. It reduces cysts. It reduces fibrosis in the body. Breaks it all down. You could also use proteolytic enzymes, on an empty stomach, always like early in the morning, like a nattokinase. You can use something like that, which also can remove some of this sort of stuff. So it can be helpful in that regard. But, your cheapest option is basically taurine. Obviously, the way we prepare meat nowadays is different. And also, if you're ancestrally from birth, you would have less of these problems. So usually I encourage people to get up to 6 grams, but go slowly. So 2 grams, do that for a couple of weeks, then move up to, so slowly to be able to tolerate higher levels, and get up to at least for a couple of months, 3 months, to about 8 grams to 10 grams, depending on how big you are or whatever. And then go and get yourself scanned before and after. So if you're rapidly clearing out that sort of stuff, you could probably come back a bit to about 6 grams. If it's slower, I don't know how much fibrosis and how much of these. So you may have to go up to 10 for a couple of years. Some people have gone up to a couple of years, like 2-3 years. I mean, for my heart fibrosis and lung fibrosis and stuff like that, and a few other things that got cleared up as well. I was doing basically about 6 years in the higher dosage levels. Then I came down. Now I just do a couple of grams, about 4 grams a day and no more, sometimes 2 grams depending. So depending if I've eaten a lot of meat, I'll only do 2 grams, and I'll just do the 2 grams at night in the evening about 6:30, and then that's just for the melatonin and to lower cortisol at night and to improve for the sleep purposes. But yeah, and I'll only do a bit more if I've got like COVID or the flu. I'll do more, and I'll do more vitamin D as well. So it depends in that regard, because then I'm supporting the immune system. But most of these things, I have gone through them, and it required higher dosages to basically emulsify and break down this sludge and remove it. You will expect this, you will get some bowel sort of, let's say, adjustments. Okay, so you may be going from constipation to diarrhea and a few other things like that as you're excreting more of this sludge, and for some people it can persist for a couple of weeks, others for months, like me. So it depends how you respond. So just keep that in mind. So if it took you years and years and years to do a lot of damage, it's not going to happen overnight. There's no miracle here. It's just basically working with the body to basically clear up all the mess, which is basically, and you have to stop doing any more damage pretty much in that regard. So the other thing is with liver is choline as well. Unless you know your genetics, because some people may have, I usually recommend about 2 grams of choline. Now, unless you're eating quite a lot of eggs, because 2 grams would be, I'll tell you how many eggs you'd need for that per day, that is. You'd need about nearly 13 and a half eggs. So, so basically, you could basically have about 6 eggs and take around about a gram or a bit over a gram, 1.2 grams of choline, and that's because I don't know your genetics. You may have genetics where you may be able to synthesize more endogenous choline, but if you don't, you have poor genetics like me, then you definitely need 2 grams. But even in the early days, I would still go a bit at the 2 grams for possibly 6 months and then drop back to 1 gram, because it exports fat out of the liver, and it also reduces some of it actually improves bile and gallbladder function as well. So synergistically, they work together. There is the FXR enzymatic pathway in the liver that also plays an important role also in the recycling of bile salts, so you don't get that sort of diarrhea discharge from malabsorption of bile. So that can be an issue in itself, and there the milk thistle can help in combination with the others. So just keep that in mind in that regard. Now, I don't do any consultancies, but you may want to consider Bart K. So if you go down to my featured channels, you'll see Bart K's. Go to his channel. If you're already subscribed to him, then you know who I'm talking about, and he does consultancies. So if you need somebody to coach you through as you're adjusting and sorting some of these things out. So that's the general information that I've provided. And you can try that and sort of try and manage it yourself. That's fine. It's at the end of the day, it's your body. But then it's a matter of considering if you're struggling for whatever reason, you need to do a consultancy. I used to do them in the past, but I just don't have the time. I've got a day job and and family and other things take up too much of my time. It's just, otherwise, if I do that, try to do YouTube stuff, I end up burning the candle at both ends, and I just can't do it. It's just not practical. I'd love to, but maybe after retirement, but I do a plan of actually starting up a different business. So I don't know, even then. So that's in 4 years' time when I'll be 60. Yes, Jacob. Harry, it's a pleasure learning about everything you share. Thanks, mate. You're welcome. Yeah, being a sufferer with cardiovascular disease myself 12 years ago, I basically, they gave me the standard bullshit thing. They don't know. And I go, well, what do you mean you don't know? You guys have been researching all this stuff for decades and decades. What do you mean you don't know? And then you're recommending things that you don't even know how they work properly when I challenge you on those things. So why are you recommending things like statins and many other things? So I did a deep dive into a lot of things. So it was more motivated for me understanding how my body works to fix it. And now you guys are getting you could say, because I had a lot of issues. I had joint issues, I had liver issues, I had gallbladder issues, you name it, I had it. A lot of different things. So, stomach issues and God. So pretty much I had a lot of issues to deal with. I had such bad IBS. I mean, I'm not kidding you. I used to have the worst in my work area. I used to have one of the worst, sick leaves, and now I have one of the best. That's how bad my IBS could get. Sometimes I would run out of sick leave. I'd have to take long, like recreational leave to be able to, deal with it. So, yeah. So basically, I struggled with a lot of things for many years, and eventually it was the cardiovascular incident 12 years ago that scared the living daylights out of me, because that's what it did, sort of, it was like seeing the grim reaper stand in front of me and say, your number's nearly up, mate. And at that point, yeah, I was trying to find out how to basically stop this from happening. So since these people had no idea, I had to do a deep dive in everything. And so I am where I am now because of that. So you guys get the benefit of my deep dives and, let's say, a lot of days of where I was scratching my head and wondering whether I'm on the right path. I know what I'm doing, and because I went down a lot of different wrong paths and sort of lost my way for a while, and then eventually, but in a sense, sometimes failing, you learn from your failures. So but it was let's say, an interesting endeavor. But I suspect a lot of other people have had similar experiences as well. So I'm not going to play down their experiences, and have driven them to find and learn more. Others, it was easier for them because they already had a certain level of knowledge, like Bart, already pre-existing knowledge within academia. But then again, that also can be an impediment, because you actually get schooled in a certain way to think in a certain way, where I didn't, and I can think outside the box differently. And maybe that gives me a different way of viewing the world. I look at Einstein, for instance. He couldn't get a position in any university. They wouldn't appoint him anywhere. So he was an outsider. But he basically, worked in the patent office. And working in the patent office, he was able to see all these things. So everybody was seeing it in this reductionist way. And that's how I actually sort of thought about that, because I started looking at all these studies. I said, I wonder if Einstein, when he was looking at all these studies, he was seeing them in this narrow way of researching, in this sort of reductionist. And he actually pulled all this together and realized, oh, this relates with that, and this guy's missed that, and whatever. And I think through being at the patent office, he was able to see the bigger picture. And I think I've approached this whole area with fresh eyes from above, seeing the whole picture, all these sort of things, and reading just hundreds and hundreds of studies, and high quality studies. At least I realized that some stuff was junk and some stuff was quality. Anything associational was just garbage. I just focused on mechanistics. Can you replicate a cause and effect pathway over and over again in terms of, or high inference, high quality in that regard. And in that way, I was able to understand how the physiology works and how certain interactions happen in the body. And so I approach things a very different way, where people they read certain things, this is the mantra, this is the dogma or whatever, and they just go with that in many cases. I understand because, even from, I come from also a field which is around the engineering faculty. I think engineers and, spatial sciences, which is my field, is also, even computer science is very much, this sort of problem solving sort of field. And where most, I think sometimes some of the other fields are far too indoctrinated, where in our sort of fields, we have to fix problems, if something don't work, nobody's going to pay you. And, the system, if it doesn't work, you got a problem, So you got to be a problem solver. And I think people that come from that sort of things view and problem solve systems. We look at systems, the body as well, that it's a whole lot of moving parts interacting, and you've got to understand how one feedbacks and, are interacting and all that. So you view things less reductionist and less in a much more complex interplay of parts. And one thing that can sort of compromise under certain circumstances, but not under other circumstances. The same material can be used, but if you use it slightly differently, it may not be structurally sound. An engineer can understand that nuancing of the same material. Most of these guys have no idea. They treat it as all the same. They go, no, that's going into the body and interacting with a whole lot of hormones and a whole lot of other things. It's not the same in these different states. And so coming from that, like Ivor Cummings and many others, coming from that sort of background, you analyze things in a very different way, and you view the world in a very different way. And I think that's why a lot of people coming from sort of an engineering background or a computer science background tend to be problem solvers and tend to have a very different approach in the way they look at data. So we just want to know how it works and whether it works. We're not driven by ideologies, because if it doesn't work, it's going to fall apart. The bridge will fall down, or the computer won't work, or whatever, So it's a different mindset. And I think to a large extent, especially nutritional science, God, that's just an ideology. Religion nearly did start with the Seventh-day Adventists. So it doesn't surprise me at all. You're fearful of something? I'm in Sydney. Do you know how I can access more parts of the nose to tail way of eating? Look, most people don't really need the nose to tail. Jacob, I mean, most people, unless I usually recommend people, if they are like very sick, to consider eating some, like organ meats to get more nutrient density for that sickness period and stuff like that. And even ancestrally, that's what people did. They would give to pregnant women or sick people or stuff like that. So, more of that sort of stuff. If you're nutrient deficient because you've been on a very poor diet for a very long time, it sometimes is indicated to consume more of these animal food, parts of the animal that can actually increase your nutrient density in that regard. It's like doing the higher doses of taurine to fix fibrosis and a whole lot of other things, and then coming down to more normal levels once you've sorted those things out. So, and then, there are cross reactions with some people with, they hold on to sulfur. So there they may need a bit of choline. And so, eggs are great because they combine both, so there's a whole lot of things. So, I mean, on your journey to health, there's going to be different stages where you need to make adjustments to things, taking these considerations. But I'll ask. There are, look, if you go to any health food store and all that, some of them will have organ meat, things like supplements. Like I would suggest to most people, rather than actually going out and buying liver pills and stuff like that, go to your butcher and ask them for a whole lot of organs and get them to basically, a bit of heart, some liver, some kidneys and all that, and basically mince them all together with some mincemeat and make patties. That's a great way of actually doing it, so of, increasing nutrient density. So there's a whole lot of options you can use in that regard. They usually throw a lot of that stuff away. So if you've got a relationship with you'd be buying it for next to nothing. And if you're a regular customer buying a whole lot of like minced meat from that person as well, they'll put that other stuff apart on the side there, So just think of it. Hearts is like another muscle meat, got shitloads of stuff. We don't need to go and buy all these supplements. I don't sell supplements. I don't promote supplements. And I consider using supplements as a way of rectifying something in the short term. The only thing that I do supplement is primarily that one thing, which is taurine. And the reason for that, in a specific one from my herb, which is in a free form, very much like it is in the animal food. And it's because if you freshly slaughter the animal and you eat it like a tribal person, cook it and eat it and all that, it's freshly slaughtered, like my father and me used to do when I was young. Then, that's going to have a good level of fluids in it and taurine because it's in the fluids. But if you hang it up, even for a couple of weeks, all the fluids will come out of it. And as a consequence, you'll lose a significant portion of that taurine. And that's why, and then when you cook it, you'll lose a bit more from the fluids that will come out if you overcook it. And you'll still have some taurine in there, but not as much as a freshly slaughtered animal, not overcooked. And that's where some people, when they go on a raw carny diet, they get some relief because they're getting more taurine as a consequence. That's the magic stuff in the raw meat. Plus some enzymes and other things like that are not lost, which can help with digestion as well in the early days where they still may have some derangements in producing good levels of digestive enzymes and things like that. So they can get some benefits as a consequence. That's where that benefit comes. But you can actually take taurine as supplementation, which can actually even improve the functioning of your pancreas to release more proteolytic enzymes. So improve that whole function. It literally regulates from your mouth right through to your anus. It regulates all that sort of stuff, the digestive tract. So it's great stuff. But unfortunately, nowadays, the way we process things and all that, we lose a lot of the stuff. So that's this sort of, yeah. But yeah, I'd go for the butcher option. I sometimes get hearts, and that's because, with my heart issue that I had for many years, and I love beef patties, I have to say. It's probably the only way I actually like beef. I don't, as I said, I'm more pork when it comes to steaks and lamb and stuff like that. They are my two favorite meats, lamb and pork. But beef patties, I do love them, I have to say. And I'll actually get the butcher to put some hearts in there and mince them together and stuff like that. And you can put other organs as well if you want to as well. So that's an option. And it'll actually save you money. So you can actually make a big batch. You can actually say to I want to order 2 kilos and all that, put a kilo of, mince muscle meat and then all these other organs, the rest, or you can do 75. But I used to use 75% muscle meat, 25% all these organs. Get them to mince it all together, put it all together, buy a couple of kilos. Yeah. And you'll build a good relationship with a local, butcher. So that's what you need to do. A man after my own heart. Yes. It does constantly heal itself. That's true. And if you stop inflaming it and you eat appropriately, we could just use some biohacks to sort of accelerate it. That's the only difference. But, you know, the reality is, as long as you stop doing the damage, the continued damage mark, it does make a difference. But some people have done far too much damage, and then we need to do more. They get to cancerous levels and stuff like that. And that's where I've got a whole lot of videos how to deal with once you get to that level of damage. So, everybody's at a different on their journey to health. They're at a different point, compared to everyone else. It's just the way it is. So yes. Thanks, mate. Wrong name. The twitching and weakness in my ear only started when I went high fat, low carb, continued even on carnivore. It sounds like an electrolyte issue then. Add more salt. You may be one of those people that excrete a lot of salt. Some people are big excreters. I tend to be. But as I've reduced my water intake and upregulated my antidiuretic hormones, it seems to have reduced. I don't excrete as much sodium as I used to. I used to quite a bit. Yeah. So in my old days, I could actually taste the salt, the saltiness on my skin. That's how much I excreted really badly. So some people have that, and that could be a problem as well. So, the taurine may not be helping if you're not getting enough salt as well. So consider that as well. Experiment. Start lowering your water consumption and increasing your salt intake and seeing whether that sort of sorts itself out. So, and don't do it very rapidly, do it slowly. So increase and decrease these things slowly until you find a sweet spot. And then, you're going to be fine. Yep. You guys are so switched on. And there's a Discord for those who may be not up to date in that regard. So we're getting close to, it's nearly 2:30. I'm going to pull the pin because I'm going to go over to Dad's shortly. So I said I'm going to come past and have a coffee with him at 3:00. So I'll go and do that. And then I have to come back and have a meal before my next live stream. So, and I've probably missed a few people. I'll quickly just take a look and see whether there's any real big one that needs to be, that's like critical. Nope, I can't see anything that is like has to be answered. Anyway, I will leave it at that. I'm going to run right to the end because I can. Rancid butter after a night out. What are you doing to yourself? God almighty. Mate. Bloody hell. Anyway. What was that, Dean? Okay. Okay. Oh well, everybody's got funny thinking in that regard. You're welcome, mate. G'day, mate. Harry, what's your fathom about the way of Frank Tufano's eating promoting these days? He's lost the plot, mate. He's lost the plot completely. Lost the plot. It didn't surprise me. A lot of them going down the Ray Pete pathway. They just, I don't know, just lost the plot. But it doesn't surprise me at all. You know, sometimes, you know, I mean, like, for instance, if we take a look at Salad Boy, Saladino, I don't know what he was going through and stuff like that. There are a couple of issues there. He may, because he was under eating protein, he would have been getting less taurine to regulate his gut. Now, he basically took some honey in those days. Now, if you get raw honey, there are elements within raw honey. Forget about the fructose side, which is a problem, but that raw honey does have some anti-allergy type effects. So it actually can reduce some of the severity of histamine. So doing that, he didn't realize he probably got a bit of a benefit, and so he deluded himself that was the way to go. Where really, if you're eating fresh meat and eating sufficient, as our ancestors did, you get enough taurine to regulate inflammasome in the gut, and you wouldn't get that problem in the first place. And a lot of these people, because they've got this reductionist way of, or they don't understand a lot of these things, and they just follow any popular dietary approach that pops up, and obviously they'll jump on the next bandwagon, and that's what he's done, Saladino's done, and many others. It's just the way a lot of these people operate. I mean, I've got nothing against them, you know, good luck to you if that's what you want to do and all that, but their claims are baseless, and at the same time, their understanding about human physiology and many other things, you know, has to be questioned, because they don't understand the Randall cycle properly. They don't understand some of these regulatory functions within the gut where taurine plays an important role. They don't understand deuterium, you know, and its consequences on the mitochondria. There's a lot of things these people don't understand. So if you're basically ignorant about key things about physiology, do you think you should be charging shitloads of money to give people advice? I'll leave that for people to answer that themselves. I know what my opinion is, but that's my opinion and only my opinion. It's not a criticism; it's just my opinion. You know, I've got opinions on, you know, allopathic doctors and naturopaths and their views about medicines, and everything can be solved with a medicine, and naturopaths, everything can be solved with a supplement. It's very reductionist and very narrow-minded thinking. And unfortunately, a lot of these people do succumb to that sort of thinking model, because that's what the majority of people do think in most of the spaces. It's just a reality. Very few are mavericks or think outside the box, or, you know, try to understand deeper relationships between, you know, the way things work within a system. maybe because I come from a background which is a problem-solving background, the engineering sort of field, that we are problem solvers naturally. And so it sort of comes naturally to us, this ability to pull apart things and try and work out how they interact, where a lot of these people don't have that mindset. So it's not a criticism of the people, it's a criticism of the way they think things through or approach things, which is a problem. It's basically a non-problem solving engineering approach that they have. And that's why they end up, accepting and thinking in reductionist terms. It's just the way it is. Anyway, let's move on. Yeah, thanks, Sammy. I will pass on your regards. He does know a number of my subscribers and people who, like yourself and others, I've mentioned names, and Richard and Paul down south. And so Dad's aware of some of the people that do follow me. So I've mentioned a few names, so he's well aware of them. So yeah, I will pass on your regards. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Nathan. And Michaelis, thanks as well. And I'm out of here. So see you all in a fortnight's time, because we'll be back to the fortnight schedule. So we're back to normal now that sort of things have calmed down on the family side. In that regard, things seem to have come back to normality. So I can actually start spending a bit of time on myself and doing some YouTube stuff, and not having to worry about everybody else or dealing with their problems. So expect a few more videos out of me in the next couple of weeks, and sort of live stream next fortnight. And the Eurasia one will be in about 3.5, less than 3.5 hours from now. So I better get going, because I need to have a feed as well. I haven't had anything other than this single coffee. That's it. So I'm out of here. See yous.